Welcome, everyone, to the monthly meeting of the Knoxville Knox County Planning Commission. I am Tim Hill, Chair of the Planning Commission, and I'll be conducting today's meeting. Assisting me today is the Executive Director of Knoxville Knox County Planning, Amy Brooks, and the Planning Commission Attorney, Tasha Blakeney. I would like to call this meeting to order, and I'll now ask Ms. Karen to call the roll.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. Commissioners Perez, Barber, Smith, and Midas have all let us know that they're unable to attend. Commissioner Uten?
Here.
Commissioner Boyer?
Here.
Commissioner Huber?
Here.
Commissioner Shelton?
Here.
Commissioner Browning?
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Higgins?
Here.
Oh, I got you.
Commissioner Levinson?
Here.
Commissioner Biggs?
Here.
Commissioner Adams?
Here.
Commissioner Hill? Commissioner Hill?
Here.
That's 10 present, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Karen. Participating today are planning commissioners as well as planning staff and various representatives of city and county agencies. The planning commissioners are citizens from the city and county who have been appointed by either the city mayor or the county mayor. We receive no salary and volunteer our time as a service to the community. Now, a word about how discussion will take place. After each item is called, I'll read the staff's recommendation. On certain items, I'll call on staff to comment. At this time, the applicant may address the commission or defer his or her opening remarks and allow any opposition to speak first. The applicant and those in support of the applicant will be given a total of 5 minutes to speak. I will then ask for other comments from the floor. The opposition will also be given a total of 5 minutes to speak. If either side wishes to have an opportunity for rebuttal, you'll need to reserve time from your allotted 5 minutes. Applicants and citizens who registered to participate and are attending the meeting in person will be asked to come to the podium and share their name and address for the record where their item is heard. Those who have registered to speak online do not need to sign in at the podium. If you'd like to speak on an agenda item and have not registered to do so in advance, please raise your hand when the item is read into the record. I'll then indicate when it is time for you to speak, and you can approach the podium at that time. You'll be asked to sign in at the podium as well as state your name and address for the record. If the planning commission decision on that item is appealed and we need to notify you, we cannot do so without your name and address. The planning commission may grant additional time for presentation of information. Speakers should limit their remarks to the facts of the case and should avoid repeating comments that have been previously presented to the planning commission. Because of the number of items that we have before us, groups in favor or opposed to an item have been asked to appoint a spokesperson to represent them. If you have any items that you would like to make part of the record, please submit those documents to knoxplanning.org/share, and please identify the file number and meeting date in your submittal. I hope all of you have reviewed the agenda package from Planning's website. In addition to the agenda, there's information on the website related to how today's meeting will be conducted, as well as correspondence on individual cases. Many of the items that we vote on require further action by a city council or county commission. For matters that are forwarded to city council for final action, the applicant or their representative should be present at the meeting at which the request will be considered. For matters forwarded to the county commission for final action, particularly rezoning requests, the applicant or their representative must, and I repeat, must be present at the meeting at which the request will be considered, or the case at minimum will be postponed. Applicants will be notified of the meeting date. If you have any questions regarding the meeting date or process, please contact planning staff. Today's meeting will be conducted in order of the agenda. And please stand as you are able as Vice Chair Chris Uten leads us in the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bow your heads, please. Our Father, bless this community. Help to ensure the decisions made this afternoon are fair, legal, and in the best interest of the total community. As always, keep us mindful of the needs of others, especially those who are in sorrow, need, sickness, or any other adversity. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda are the postponement and withdrawal lists. Under automatic postponements, item 15, Middlebrook Grove. On the 30-day postponements, we have item 14, Millertown Villas, and item 16, Danny Heidel. Chair will entertain a motion.
Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, there's more. Let me add to that list. Item 26, R. Bentley Marlowe revised. Item 34, BB Investment Properties LLC.
Motion.
Are there any requests? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I need to recuse from the postponement list, please.
Okay, the 30-day postponement list. Okay, we've got Commissioner Huber is recusing on the postponement list, the 30-day postponement list. Are there any other requests to postpone?
Motion to postpone for 30 days as read.
Second.
So we have a motion by Vice Chair Uten and seconded by Commissioner Boyer. And seeing no other lights, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Under withdrawals, any recusals on withdrawals? Number 19, Josh Braden. Chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to withdraw.
Second.
Have a motion by Vice Chair Uten, seconded by Commissioner Boyer. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Under the tabled list, we have item 22, R. Bentley Marlowe. Item 36, Wilkinson subdivision. Chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to table.
Second.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Uten, seconded by Commissioner Boyer. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. We will now move on. Since we have no items to be removed from the table, we'll move on to the consent list, which is composed of items marked with a C. These items are considered non-controversial and are voted on all at once in order to save time. Items are listed in the order they appear on the agenda. Please listen carefully. Once an item is approved as part of the consent list, there will be no further discussion on it. I will repeat, once an item is approved as part of the consent list, there will be no further discussion on it. Item 2, approval of October 5, 2023 agenda. Item 3, approval of September 14, 2023 minutes. Item 5, Eric Forrestal. Item 7, Gabriel Ratcliffe. Item 9, Amy Sherrill. Item 11, Juan Hernandez. Item 12, Matt Brazil. Item 13, Jim Fox. Item 20, City of Knoxville. Item 29, A Step Towards Home. Item 32, Coreyton A Series LLC of Delta Properties LLC. Item 33, Taylor D. Forrester. Item 38, Mayor Property Subdivision. Item 39, Asheville Highway Subdivision. Item 40, Michael Brabston Trucking, Inc. Item 41, T. Gale Roberts. Item 42, Empower at Valley Green Farm. Item 43, Holston Springs LLC. Item 45, Final Plat of Sparks Meadow Subdivision. Item 46, Deneen Stallings. Item 47, Knoxville, Knox County Planning. Are there any requests to remove an item from the consent list?
Chair, could we please remove item number 33?
Any other requests? All right, so removing item 33 from the consent list. Any recusals? Chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the consent list as read with the removal of item number 33.
Second.
We've got a motion by Vice Chair Uten, seconded by Commissioner Boyer. Seeing no lights, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We will now move to our first agenda item, number 6. Applicant Maple Lane Homes LLC, location north side of West Ridge Drive, west side of Greg Ruth Way. Approximate size of tract, 19,345 square feet. Present plan and zoning designation, civic and institutional, RN1, single family residential. Proposed plan and designation, low-density residential. Existing land use is public, quasi-public land. Staff recommendation, this will require 2 motions. Staff recommendation, approve the sector plan amendment to LDR, low-density residential, because it is consistent with the conditions and development in the area. Motion number 2, staff recommendation, approve the 1-year amendment to low-density residential because it is compatible with surrounding land uses. Is the applicant present?
Here on behalf of the applicant.
Do we have any opposition? We have opposition. Would you like to proceed or defer?
I'd like to proceed.
Okay.
Taylor Forrester, 1111 North Shore Drive, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37919. Here on behalf of the applicant, Maple Lane Homes. And we'll take these in order, but this is, the initial one is for the sector plan amendment. We're requesting a sector plan amendment from the current plan designation, which is CI, Civic Institutional, to LDR. I assume or presume that the CI designation, as you, if staff can pull it up to show the sector plan for the area, that it was received that designation because this property used to be owned by the Church of the Nazareth. My client has recently purchased this property, which brings us to this request here. So in looking at the surrounding property, our little finger annex that's currently has a sector plan of CI obviously is inconsistent with the area. The area is in the West Hills area. It's may primarily consist of single-family, low-density residential. There's a school and there's some other churches. But in following staff's recommendation to approve this request, we do find that or feel that it supports the requirements necessary for the sector plan amendment and ask that you approve. Thank you.
We have 4 people signed up to speak. Dale Brotherton.
Well, I live across the street, and
Mr. Brotherton, if you give the name and address, please.
Dale Brotherton, 7404 West Ridge Drive, 37909.
Thank you.
And I've lived across the street from this property for 43 years. And my property has 2.2 acres, 1 house, 1 residence. And I don't agree that it's like-kind property because we don't have any duplexes in our neighborhood. And it's my understanding that that's what they're wanting to build. And that lot, as you can see, when he pulled up the map of the lot, has a little expenditure across the back, which is pretty useless. If you don't count that, it's a little over 1/3 of an acre. And for a duplex, that's a pretty small lot, especially in that neighborhood where everybody's got, half an acre or more, and some have as much as 2 acres. So I think it's highly inappropriate, and that lot drops off pretty steeply from the road, And those lots on that north side of that street, the driveways don't get any sun in the wintertime, they freeze, and all the people that live on that side park on the street. Actually, today, there were 2 cars parked on the street over there, and that street gets a lot of traffic because it goes down to the school. You get all the kids going down to school, the bikers use that as a connector through the bike trails, all the people with little kids going down to the park. So, I've seen people almost get hit, coming in and out of behind cars. And I've actually hit a car, in the wintertime when they were all parked out there on the street. They park on both sides. So if we get a duplex over there on 1/3 of an acre, where are they going to put all their cars? They're going to put them on the street. And it's just going to make it that much worse than it already is. And I don't see the use. I mean, I'd be happy to see a single family residence there, but I don't agree with this low density, duplex. I just don't think it's appropriate for our neighborhood.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Chris Kirby?
Hello, I'm Chris Kirby. I've lived across the street from the lot in question for about 35 years. I bought a house there, an RN1 zoning house there, and I bought a house there across the street from a lot that was zoned RN1, and I think I would like to see it continue to be zoned RN1. I agree with everything that my next door neighbor said, Dale, about the parking situation, about the lot size, 100% in agreement with Dale. Thank you.
Thank you. This comment may or may not save time, but, today we're only looking at the RN1 rezoning request. There would be another process if the applicant decided to go propose a duplex. That would be under a special use consideration. So that's another step beyond today. All right, Chuck Price? Isn't that right?
No rezoning, just a.
Oh, excuse me, yeah, plan amendment, excuse me, yeah. Let's see, Chuck Price or Matt Davis?
Yes, Matt Davis. I live at 7405 West Ridge Drive, Knoxville 37909. So there is a lot between my house and this proposed lot. So I've been a West Hills resident for just a little over 2.5 years now, and I think the neighbors do agree and understand what you were saying about we don't really oppose to this zoning becoming a RN1, and we understand the reason why. But I think the primary purpose for us speaking today is just that we know West Hills community is routinely coming under fire with new developments and new rezoning. So even though we know we all agree that RN1's the appropriate, I think it's more of like a show of concern of what the future amendment could be or rezoning in the future. So I do know that the proposement is eventually the intent is to eventually construct a duplex. And it's just more to reiterate that, our fear is that is not within the character of West Hills, and we're just going to routinely continue to come to these meetings beyond this today. So we will agree with RN1, but beyond that, we're going to strictly oppose that. That's all I have.
Thank you for your comments.
Again, we're not asking for a rezoning from RN1. RN1 is the current zoning. we're sticking with the current zoning. This is simply a sector plan amendment to bring it in line with the adjacent surrounding properties. Thanks.
Commission? Commissioner Shelso.
For a special use approval for the residents here, that would require a site plan to be submitted, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Well, given that this is a pretty straightforward plan amendment and one-year plan amendment, I'll go ahead and move to approve the sector plan amendment to LDR because it is consistent with the conditions and development in the area.
Second.
We've got a motion from Commissioner Shelso to approve the sector plan amendment to LDR per staff recommendation, seconded by Commissioner Huber. Seeing no other lights, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we need another motion.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and also move to approve the one-year plan amendment to LDR because it is compatible with the surrounding land uses per staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion by Commissioner Shelso to approve the one-year plan amendment to LDR because it's compatible with surrounding land uses, seconded by Commissioner Huber. Seeing no other lights, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. On to agenda item number 8. Applicant Smee Busby Architects, location northeast quadrant of the intersection of Union Avenue and State Street, 1.12 acres. Present zoning, DKG. Zoning requested is DKB, which is the Downtown District Boulevards Subdistrict. Existing land use, transportation, communications, utilities, parking lot. Staff recommendation is to deny the DKB subdistrict because the property is not consistent with the district's intent. Is the applicant available?
Scott Busby, 2554 Sutherland Avenue, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37919.
All right. Do we have any opposition? Seeing no opposition, you may proceed, Mr. Busby.
Sure. Call up. Okay. So a couple of things. Not a whole lot's changed. It's kind of deja vu here a little bit from last month. But we did want to bring up a couple of points that have been discussed kind of around the point, but not made up. It was made obvious and aware that this street, State Street, is not a super public street. There's not a lot of walkability on it. And it's the intent of the design of the program itself to help increase that. There is actually currently 60% of the facade on the ground level is designed as retail and commercial. And that commercial is planned to intend to be a restaurant, retail, coffee shop kind of thing that is hoped to attract more foot traffic to that spot. So the actual pieces that is designed as work live is about 40% of the entire street facades that are along there. So the majority of the design as it is now is commercial. It provides some housing options that are not currently available, and as we know, there are a little bit of a shortage of housing right now in our city, and including some workforce housing that are planned in the development. And if the exterior public spaces we're providing are actually covered as part of the exterior of the coffee shop retail areas, so it can be an inviting space for people to actually hang out in, as well as the stoops that are along the facade, along the State Street. So it will, we think, actually activate that street in more ways than it currently is doing now as a parking lot. So, and the last thing that we've been asked to kind of say is that the required commercial use on the ground floor really makes this project non-financeable right now for the foreseeable future. So if we have any questions? Do you have anything else to add?
Commissioner Higgins.
Thank you. Can we get this map on the screen? The one that was passed out at the agenda review? So really, for now, all I want to say is I have nothing against the development. I think that we need these parking lots to be developed, and I'm excited to see what gets built there. But to rezone for a very specific part of their program is kind of like the tail wagging the dog in this situation. It doesn't really make sense. And when you look at this map of the downtown zones, it's more clear why staff is opposing this or recommending denial, and why I can't support this either, because if you look at this map, the green area is the zone that they are requesting. The purple area is the zone that they are currently under. And then can we hover over where their site is? I don't know if that shows up. Yeah, so over there. So you can see a very clear pattern and intentionality as to where the boulevard districts were overlaid in downtown. They relate to those high vehicular traffic areas and have accompanying design guidelines for that purpose. So my opposition to this is strictly because it is completely backwards to what the zoning for the downtown area is laid out to do. So I hope that we can all agree on that, but I just don't see how it makes any sense for us to approve this, and their only rationale is a very specific element of their program, not a zoning related need. So thank you.
Well, your hope that everyone agrees with you may not come to pass. I'll let Commissioner Browning.
Thank you, Chairman Hill. Yes, with all due respect to my Commissioner Higgins, I do disagree with this. It's for a number of reasons. Number one, last week, the developer stood up here and spoke to us. And I really do see A, B, and C streets right now with downtown. And that street there on where this is proposed to be, I mean, is a C street. And I just don't see it lending itself to commercial use at all. At the same time, the plans specifically say that if there is ever commercial demand down there, that they can be retrofitted to commercial. I think we're kind of getting the best of both worlds right here. And also, this development's not going to happen if we don't approve this to DKB. So personally, and I'll wait to hear other comments, but I'm going to make a motion to rezone from DKG to DKB.
Second.
We've got a motion from Commissioner Browning to rezone from DKG to DKB, seconded by Commissioner Boyer. We have other lights and more conversation. So let's go to Commissioner Shelso.
I think that, a B street will never become an A street, or a C street will never become a B street unless we stick to a plan that our community decided we need. And that plan is to enforce having, commercial venues on ground levels. If we continue to fill these streets with just townhome style doors, they're not going to become walkable. And I understand there's a degree of a plan that in this particular site has been proposed to have some commercial, but we're not looking at a plan. We're looking at a zone and what is appropriate for where the zone is, where the property is. And so, the idea of a development won't happen because of this one specific need. Well, if someone was proposing a factory right there, would we have the same argument? That's the other extreme in my eyes is, threatening a development as not happening because of I'm going down a, never mind. But yeah, I agree that we should not rezone this. So I'll be voting against approving it.
Commissioner Adams.
I want to pull this, but I don't have to. Okay. I really appreciate what Commissioner Higgins said. And Commissioner Browning, I was more in your camp last month. I thought about this a lot, though. And I disagree with the comment made by the applicant that that street is not walkable. It's incredibly walkable. It's got everything you need for walkability, except a reason to walk there right now. And I think that the thing that would bring the reason to walk there is more commercial. And I think that is what this zone is trying to guide development to do. So I concur that we won't get that change if we keep changing the rules. So I am going to support the denial, and I will not be supporting the change in zoning.
Thank you. Commissioner Hubert.
Well, I guess on the other side, I would disagree respectfully with Commissioner Adams. But yeah, I feel like we're just drilling down a little too much on it. I mean, it's still in the mixed use regional center plan. I mean, it's in the sector plan, and the differences between the DKB and the DKG are so minor. And what I think I'm hearing Mr. Busby say is 60% of it's already going to be commercial, which is the only thing we're really talking about. And so the question to me is, you've got 40% that might be a live-work scenario. So that's really all we're talking about is 40% of one floor of this is the difference. But it is the difference that is a go or no-go for the entire deal. So that, I've been down that street. I mean, even since last month, I visited the street again. Given that the hotel, or pardon me, the apartment complex next door is already built to this same exact standard. Although the zones have been changed since then, I think it's the right thing to do to zone it to DKB. I do not think it's injurious. It's not going to not allow that type of development somewhere else in downtown. But we have an opportunity here where the differences are so minor, yet it allows a good quality project to move forward. So I'll most definitely be in support.
Commissioner Biggs.
Yeah, I'm a little torn on this one. I definitely appreciate both Commissioner Higgins' perspective and others as well. I guess a question for me, is there anything in the DKB zoning, should this be rezoned, that would require that 60% usage for retail? Or if you guys go to the bank in 2 months and interest rates go up and they say, actually, we think there needs to be more residential here to make this pencil, is that something that could foreseeably kind of change in terms of full ground use of retail? And I think that's what the zoning's currently protecting against, and I don't know how this change could affect that.
Good afternoon, Buzz Goss. I actually live at 300 State Street. I'm a neighbor here.
Wait, excuse me just a minute. Was that addressed to Mr. Goss?
Not necessarily, but I'm curious to hear your response as well.
All right, well, thank you. The requirement is commercial, right? And what we're putting together is an economic model and a development that we think meets the spirit of that. However, it doesn't meet the letter of that. And so, Commissioner Higgins, I appreciate what you have to say. However, what you're asking me to do is fix problems that the city created. State Street Garage, the Promenade Garage, the back of the cinema. Like, we're all blessed and better to have those, but it makes the street, it's walkable. However, it doesn't make it the street that has all the attention. And actually, when you put in the elevated walkway from the State Street parking garage to Gay Street, which most people take, it takes the feet off the street. And so you're asking me to go ahead and spend money that really isn't viable to spend on something today that there's not a market for. Another issue is this, right? How do we possibly build on State Street until the city fixes the things that they've created? Right? I'm sorry, it's just not possible. I would rather build what the letter of this code requirement is, but it really isn't economically feasible. You know, another issue is inside those guidelines right there, right up at the top, the quote says, you know, to encourage, right? And this is the goals, but it also uses the word flexible. And we're just asking to be flexible. You know, the grid zone does not meet the requirements that is financially feasible. We're just choosing the options that we're given, right? And so I think Commissioner Huber is right. It's only a minor difference.
Just to, I guess, maybe turn my question to planning staff, is there anything in DKB that would require a ground floor retail presence or not necessarily?
I'll be happy to address that. Now, the DKB zone, the Boulevard District, does not allows, let's put it this way, it allows multifamily on structures, which would then allow residential on the ground floor. The only thing that the DKG does not allow is residential on the ground floor. So, but everything else would be permissible.
And I guess that's my concern, is that the rezoning in the light of changing economic circumstances could lead to that 60% evaporating potentially. I hope it doesn't, but I think that's just something we have to take into consideration too.
Well, the 50% is being built as commercial.
Commissioner Scelso.
So yeah, I was also thinking about, you know, if the project were to happen to change hands, the same concern. Could this plan, after a rezone, they could go back before DRB for a different design as well, right? Okay, so none of this current plan is locked in stone that we've seen. In fact, they've approved it. The plan we've seen has been approved at DRB. The idea of live work that we debated on a lot of that floor, ground floor, has been approved, just hasn't been portrayed in a manner that seems to coincide with live work, right?
I don't want to speak on behalf of my colleagues at Plans Review Inspection, but yes, that's my understanding.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm very supportive of the plan that I've seen. I'd like to see that come to fruition, and I don't see the need for a rezone.
You know, I think the challenge that we're faced with here is that we don't have a really a good solution. We don't have another good option in this particular case. I mean, I see this as State Street's really a glorified service alley, if you will. It's a service street. When you think about, you know, you walk from, say, what does it run, south to north, and you start with parking lots and a church and then a graveyard and then more parking lots on the other side. And then you have the State Street Garage, you have the back of the Tennessee Theater, you have an escalator, you have the promenade, you have, it's just, there's no retail there. And to imagine that there would ever be retail there, it just seems really far-fetched. And I just want to cite a couple of examples. When you look at State Supreme Court site, you know, they recognize that that retail was not a sustainable option for them. And so they integrated really just service solutions to serve the people who live within that. I think it was a bike storage and maybe a workout facility. And so, I mean, I agree there are far greater consequences, and the reverse of this is when you see street level residential on Gay Street. And that's a horrible solution there. It's a great consequence. And we have some of that. And we have some buildings that back up to Gay Street, and that's a horrible thing. But in this case, I just don't see how we, you know, the developer's screaming at you right now saying, if there was any potential for retail, he would do it. And the reason he would do it, and we typically don't introduce economics because the developers usually, he's arguing for a better economic condition. In this case, he's telling you, I'm going to convert it to something that's going to give me half the revenue than the commercial option. You'll get $40, $45 a foot in a commercial option. He's going to get probably, I don't know, $250 a foot in residential, and commercial pays CAM taxes and insurance. So he's telling you, it's not there or I would be doing it. And I just find it difficult to, and it's not this particular, I'm not looking at this particular development. I'm looking at that stretch of State Street. And for anybody, in 2003, my first development was in the old city, and all there was vacant buildings and rummage retail. And we put residential on the ground floor at 137 South Central, and the market changed later because it had more of an opportunity to change, and it's no longer residential now. So just because it's residential today doesn't mean it's going to be residential forever. Let the market dictate in some cases. So Commissioner Higgins.
Thank you. And I agree with a lot of that. And I know that there's been multiple areas of downtown that people have looked at and said, oh, nothing will ever survive there. And then something changes, and now everyone's trying to get those lots, those spaces, those in buildings and new construction. So I think what bothers me, and I support the development again, and I don't want to dictate anyone's use of their property, but we're talking about spot zoning in the oldest neighborhood in our city for the intention of a small percentage of a difference on the desired program. It's been discussed, like Commissioner Huber said, it's a small percentage of commercial that they don't have. And it's not just retail that this says to put down there. It's just commercial in general. And they've stated that they have a solution for that. They could do the live work. There are solutions. They've talked about they're putting commercial in the program. It's just facing the other direction. That's changing the plan around. So I know that's, that costs and that there's work that has to go into that, but I don't think it's a good precedent for us to spot zone something like this over a small use that is before us today. We've all seen plans in downtown come and go and change, and there was mention of the difference between these two zonings. I know that it seems like there's minor differences, but we have an entire 100+ page book of guidelines that lays out the distinct characters that each of these zones should have to keep in character with how they were developed. So there's a lot more that goes into it, rather than just this isn't just DK and DK. There's a lot more depth to the difference between these two zonings, and so that I don't see the rationale from a zoning standpoint, because we try to avoid spot zoning. We try to avoid rezoning based off of use or based off one specific person's request and their use. And it just doesn't make sense for us to change that pattern for this scenario. So,
Thank you, Commissioner Higgins. Commissioner Adams.
I think I can tell how this vote's going to go, but I do want to say for the record, I'm very much for developing that property, and I have liked everything that I've heard. So I'm not against that. It is the same case that Commissioner Higgins is making, is that it feels like we're only supposed to be looking at the land use in the zone and be looking at the guidance of a designation that was made because of some of the mistakes, Chair Hill, that I think people were responding to, like residential on Gay Street. That's why this designation happened, because there was a recognition that we don't want just Gay Street to be the only hustling, bustling kind of place for commercial. We want that to be happening on the streets that follow down. And I think that the kind of commercial activity that is possible on that street is actually very different from the example that you gave about the renovated courthouse.
State Supreme Court site.
Thank you. If I'm thinking of the site that you're talking about where the commercial was positioned on Henley, thinking of the
They
same.
also had some on the, I think it was surrounded by four streets, I believe. Yeah.
For at least 2, perhaps 3 of those street-facing areas, especially Henley. It is miserable to walk in Henley. The traffic speed that is happening there or the traffic stalls that are happening there make that not a really great place for a human scale. But State Street, where this is very different. And the parking opportunities that are there for someone who wants to shop or spend time in a retail, commercial establishment there are also a lot greater. So I feel like that's a very different example. And when I hear, that's never going to happen there, or someone who thinks that could happen there, that's just sort of pipe dreaming. That is exactly what people said to me when I lived downtown before downtown became the downtown that we know it. People thought it was crazy, but we have a really wonderful downtown now that is continuing to thrive. And I think if we start changing the rules that have been crafted in response to other errors that we feel like we made as we grew into our downtown, I think we're setting ourselves up to keep doing those things. So like I said, I think I know where the vote's going, but I want that to be developed, and I'm excited about what the opportunities are there.
Thank you. Commissioner Huber.
Yeah, I agree. I think our downtown is awesome now. I mean, 20 years ago, it was nothing like this, but I think the flexibility of city council and planning commission and the zonings that have been worked over the last 20 years are what got it there. Not as much are going to cause the demise of it. I think the flexibility in any of these, in looking at it, is very important. But I'd also like to point out again, again respectfully, Logan, I don't think this is a spot zoning. Yes, it is zone DKG right now, but it's in the general plan for that. It's in the 1-year plan in the city, as well as the sector plan. So we're fitting all those things. Just because we change the base zone inside those, that's not a spot zone. We're not changing the sector plan. We're not going against the general plan. I think it fits very well and allows it to move forward. If I was getting graded on a scale of 100, you're going to get a test, and gosh, if I got a 98 out of 100, I'd be pretty happy with it. And that's kind of how I see this. This is 98 out of 100, but it's got to be DKB instead of DKG. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other lights, everybody clear on what the motion is? It is to rezone from DKG to DKB. I appreciate everyone's comments. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
All right, let's have a roll call. Ms. Karen?
Thank you. Commissioner Uten?
Aye.
Commissioner Boyer?
Aye.
Commissioner Huber?
Aye.
Commissioner Scelsa?
No.
Commissioner Browning?
Aye.
Commissioner Higgins?
No.
Commissioner Levinson?
Aye.
Commissioner Biggs?
No.
Commissioner Adams?
No?
Commissioner Hill?
Yes.
6 aye, 4 nay.
I'm sorry, what was that count?
6 aye, 4 nay.
Okay, 6-4. Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
On to agenda item number 10. What, did I miss something?
No.
This girl today, man, she's, all right. Item number 10, applicant Erica Ayala Munoz. Location, southeast side of Merchant Drive, northeast of Pleasant Ridge Road. Approximate size of tract, 3 acres. Present plan and zoning designation, neighborhood commercial, hillside protection, and office park, hillside protection overlay. Proposed plan designation, general commercial and hillside protection. Existing land use, agricultural, forestry, vacant land. This will require 3 motions. Staff recommendation is to deny the sector plan amendment to the general commercial land use classification because it is inconsistent with surrounding land use classifications and the land use intent. The HP will be retained. Motion 2, staff recommendation, deny the one-year plan amendment to general commercial land use classification because it is inconsistent with surrounding land use classifications. The HP will be retained. Motion number 3, deny CG1 General Commercial District because it is inconsistent with the land use classifications in the Northwest City Sector Plan and the one-year plan. HP will be retained. Is the applicant present?
Hi, my name is Erica Munoz. The address is 2812 Merchants Drive. This is the first time I do this. I know nothing about this. I am requesting to rezone this property. We are trying to build a wedding venue. I know the property across, it's, let me find my paper here. The property across ours, it's zoned as CG1. And the one in the corner, I think it's a gas station, it's also CG1. That's why we decided to request to rezone this property as CG1, because of my understanding is the CG1 will allow me to build what my plans are, the venue, wedding venue. This is the first time I am investing. I have come to this office to ask, permissions and all of that. Everyone is helping me a lot, and I don't know what else to say.
All right, thank you. Did we have any opposition? No opposition? Okay. Commission. Thank you for your comments. Commissioner. Commissioner or Vice Chair Uten?
This one is very tough for me because I do understand staff's position here in keeping this plan designation to more of a neighborhood commercial because of the school across the street and the way this hub needs to form. I was a part of the group that did the larger shopping center across the street, which certainly wouldn't have been considered neighborhood commercial at the time, to try to generate some commercial hub at that corner, and it didn't fare well long-term because it probably should have been more of a neighborhood type place, I'm assuming. So I'll make the motion to deny the sector plan per staff recommendation.
I'll second.
All right, we've got a motion to deny per staff recommendation by Vice Chair Uten, seconded by Commissioner Adams. Seeing no other lights, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Chair will entertain a motion. Do we need another motion after that? No? Okay. Oh, yeah, okay. Chair will entertain a motion for the one-year plan amendment.
Make a motion to deny the one-year plan amendment to GC land use classification because it's inconsistent with the surrounding land use.
Second.
Do we get a second? Commissioner Adams, is that right? So Vice Chair Uten made that motion to deny per staff recommendation, seconded by Commissioner Adams. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
I'd like to make a motion we deny the CG1 district because it's inconsistent with the land use classification sector plan and one-year plan.
Second.
All right, a motion to deny CG1 per staff recommendation by Vice Chair Uten, seconded by Commissioner Adams. Seeing no lights, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. 17, right? All right. On to agenda item number 17. Applicant, the McNabb Center, location south side of Ball Camp Pike, east side of Matlock Drive, northeast side of Oak Bank Lane. Approximate size of tract, 5.76 acres. Zoning is office, existing land use commercial, proposed use expansion of existing residential drug alcohol treatment facility. Let's see, this is going to, okay, here we are, here it is. All right, staff recommendation is approve the request to expand the existing residential drug alcohol treatment facility to 72 beds with a total floor area of 28,713 square feet, subject to the denoted four conditions. Is the applicant present?
We are. Ben Mullins, 550 West Main Street, here for the McNabb Center.
Any opposition? We have one opposition, all right, and that would be, is this Mr. Chris Wynn? Is that, all right, Mr. Wynn, would you like to proceed or defer, Mr. Mullins?
I'll defer, please. Thank
Okay.
you.
Chris Wynn, 4404 Oak Bank Lane, also Vice President, Oak Bank HOA Association. Before, I was unaware of the changes of the invasive changes onto our street. I understand that those have been changed, but what has not been changed is the existing fence between McNabb Center and the houses that are in Oak Bank. I don't know if there's any plan to update that or update that fence. Also, some of the stuff I was reading that, and which it's probably taken care of because they're not going to be invasive to our street at this time. But the main thing I'm here is for the fence.
Okay.
That's it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Commission. This has been back before this body a couple of times. Back in 2021, we had two different proposals that came through and were approved for use on review to expand this facility. The McNabb Center never moved forward with either of those plans. They looked at some other options before coming back and scrapping those previous two plans and coming up with a larger overall plan for the expansion. In the past, I think the approved expansion was from 46 to 66 beds. This current proposal adds an additional 6 beds for a total of 72. And there's 11 existing rooms with 13 new for 24 total sleeping rooms is what this is. Mr. Wynn is correct. Previous plan had us having an access lane for service vehicles off of Oak Bank Lane, and that was one of the concerns he raised the last time we were here before this body on this property, and we've terminated that access lane. Regarding the existing fence, I think this came up the last time too, and we believe that fence may have actually been placed on the neighbor's property line. We're trying to figure that out. We understand there needs some maintenance. It's an older fence and may need some maintenance, and we're happy to talk to them about maybe helping maintain that fence. We just need to determine which side of the line it's on, and if it is in fact on their line, then we'll need their permission, obviously, to do that. If it is on our line, we'll be glad to maintain it and make sure that it is kept up. But that's something that we tried to get an answer for today, once Mr. Wynn told me that was one of his concerns, but we haven't been able to figure that out yet, but we will. Regardless, other than that, we appreciate staff's recommendation. We ask that you follow the staff's recommendation and approve this, and I'm here and Mr. Smelser's here if there's any additional questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Mullins. Commission.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion we approve the request to expand the existing residential drug alcohol treatment facility to a 72-bed with total floor area as read with 4 conditions.
Second.
We have a motion to approve per staff recommendation by Vice Chair Uten, seconded by Commissioner Higgins. And Commissioner Higgins.
Just had a question for staff. Do we know if this will trigger a landscape buffer requirement?
As a non-residential district abutting a residential district, it would trigger a Class B buffer.
That's what I thought. So if anyone is concerned, there will be a buffer required there, and more than likely incorporating a fence will be a contributing aspect of that. So
That's one of those conditions.
yeah.
Yep.
All right. So with the motion to approve per staff recommendation with the 4 conditions, we have that motion in second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. 18? All right. Agenda item 18, applicant. Yep. Hani Joseph, location west side of Mettler Drive, north of Clinton Highway, approximate size 1.03 acres. Zoning is RN2 with hillside protection overlay, existing land use, single-family residential. Proposed use, 2-family dwellings.
Good afternoon.
The staff recommendation, let's see, motion through 2, okay. Approve the request for 3 2-family dwellings in the RN2 zone, subject to the below 4 conditions. And I see we have the applicant.
Good afternoon. It's 901 Mettler Drive, Knoxville 37912. We try to do the 3 different parcels. On each parcel, try to have a duplex. Yes. Okay. And I have I don't know if you guys having the design for the plan from the surveyor.
Yeah, I think we have the materials in front of us.
Yes.
Do you need any other comments? Is that okay? Any opposition? Do we have any opposition to this development? Okay, seeing no opposition. Commissioner Scelso.
Go ahead and move to approve the request for 3 2-family dwellings, subject to the 4 conditions per staff recommendation.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Scelso to approve the request for 3 2-family dwellings in the RN2 zone, subject to the 4 conditions, seconded by Commissioner Huber. Seeing no other lights, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know what she's thinking. Okay, agenda item 21. Recommendation, this is, the motion would be recommend approval of amendments to Knoxville City Code, Appendix B, Zoning Code, moving Article 4.6 to 4.7 and inserting a new Article 4.6, middle housing standards with subsections 4.6.A types. 4.6.B uses, 4.6.C dimensional standards, 4.6.D parking standards, 4.6.E design standards, 4.6.F conversion standards, and 4.6.G administrative variations and minor revisions to Article 2.3 definitions, Article 4.2 uses, Article 4.3 dimensional standards, Article 4.6 general standards of applicability, Article 9.2 use matrix, and Article 9.3 principal use standards pertaining to middle housing standards. And Ms. Crockett, would you like to add anything on this matter? Okay, all right. Is the applicant present?
Good afternoon, Cheryl Ball, City of Knoxville Chief Policy Officer. We appreciate your attention on this item today. City Council held a workshop in March, and Opticos Design came to present. Additionally, city staff made a presentation at that workshop and facilitated a conversation with City Council about missing middle housing and their interest in moving forward with some zoning changes. We heard resounding that they were interested, and we also received many calls following that from council expressing their interest. The core team for this project has included Amy Brooks and Lindsay Crockett from Planning, Brian Berry from Plans Review and Inspections, Christina McGrons from our Law Department with the city, Liz Albertson, who is the city's urban design and development planner, and myself. We put forward a really thoughtful proposal. We hope that you will find that it is pretty comprehensive. Middle housing is about promoting the development of neighborhood-scale housing forms which are compatible with existing housing in the area. Our goal is to begin the process of creating more diverse housing options at a variety of price points for Knoxville residents. As Mayor Kincannon indicated at the opening of the City Council workshop last week, this is one piece, a small piece, of an overall housing strategy. The intent is to bring forward a more comprehensive housing plan in a few months. Based on their experience with cities across the country, Opticos Design emphasized that missing middle housing is not necessarily a good fit across all areas of town, and that cities with the most success have started with a limited geographic area that already has access to infrastructure like transit, it's walkable and bikeable, and has access to neighborhood servicing businesses. Traditional neighborhood residential, TDR, is described as a mix of detached and attached houses, often on smaller lots. TDR is walkable and bikeable. It aligns well with the CAT reimagined routes that will take effect next year, and residents have access to businesses close by. This is the geographic area that the plan is based on. I met with more than 40 individuals during the time we were working on the plan to gain insights before it launched the end of August. These included residents in the neighborhoods impacted. It included several local small residential contractors, as that is who is most likely to be building middle housing. It also included many who are concerned about the need for housing in our community. While middle housing was not really designed specifically to be an affordable housing strategy, it does not mean it cannot be affordable. I have met with several of our local nonprofit developers about this plan, and they're particularly excited to see this come to fruition. Since our plan launched via the city's website, in addition to the planning site, we've spoken with neighborhood groups, hosted 2 community open house events, and conducted a city council workshop. We appreciate the attendance of the community, and to those of you who were able to attend, we appreciate that as well. All the comments from the open house events can be found on the planning site with the case item, and soon to come on the city site as well. As I think you're aware, we are pleased to have Opticos Design conduct a peer review of our middle housing plan. We took those suggestions, the comments, and the discussion from the open house events, as well as suggestions and comments from the City Council workshop, and made some small tweaks to our plan. The result were some additional clarifying edits, primarily to the language, with no substantive changes or changes to the intent. We truly appreciate all those who provided comments, including some from this body, and those who reached out with suggestions. Finally, we hope this will be the first phase of several to come related not only to middle housing, but other land use items that have come up as a result of this work and comments and suggestions from the community. However, this is the first step, and I will be happy to take many questions when you're ready.
Commission, we have, I think, 10 people signed up, 11 people signed up for this. So I'm going to recommend I'll throw something out there, say 2 minutes per person. Anybody got any better ideas? Any suggestions? 2 minutes per person? Okay. All right, that's what it'll be, 2 minutes per person.
They don't have to use all 2 minutes though, right?
That's right. They don't have to. They'll get good time credit if they don't. Okay. All right, so I'll just go down the list here. Let's see.
Commissioner Hill?
Right here. Yes.
Are all of the persons signed up in opposition?
No, we have some for and some against, and some might even be somewhere in between.
Okay.
Okay. All right, Zoe Scott. Zoe Scott. And I'm going to put somebody on deck here just so you'll be ready. Aaron Jernigan.
Hi,
Ms. Scott, if you'll give your name and address, please.
Zoe Scott, 4013 Heather Court. I'm speaking on behalf of Bike Walk Knoxville as a nonprofit organization that works to make Knoxville a better place to bike and walk for people of all ages, abilities, and backgrounds. We are super thrilled to support this proposal from the city. We think that it's a great way to encourage walkable, bikeable, accessible neighborhoods for everyone, and we think that it's a great first step. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jernigan. And then next on deck will be Christina Bowler.
If I may, Christina Bowler is stuck in traffic and she has asked me to read her comments for her, if that's allowed, after I read my comments.
Is this legal?
Sure.
Okay, that'll be fine.
Thank you. We need more housing, we need it closer to the city, and we needed it yesterday. So let's support this measure today. This proposal is not perfect, and in isolation will do nothing to stabilize our housing market. But it is a good first step toward the goals of increasing housing supply and diversity, reconnecting our walkable neighborhoods, and building our tax base. I'd like to briefly address 3 key points. A quadplex should be allowed on a 45-foot wide lot if the other dimensional standards can be met. The current proposal has the standard as a higher lot width, which would preclude a quadplex from a typical lot. Please modify this proposal to re-allow quadplexes in our traditional neighborhoods as they are a traditional typology. All typologies are compatible with all of the base zones. Please allow all of these middle housing types in all base zones. The whole point is that they look and act compatible with single-family homes while providing more units, less maintenance per person, less cost, more connectivity, and more tax dollars per acre. Let's allow these benefits in all zones, and let's allow all people the freedom to determine where they live. Finally, demolitions and conversions should not be grounds to hold this proposal up. The cost of land acquisition and the actual cost of demolishing an existing home would rule out this scenario unless that existing home is truly rotting and didn't hold much market value anyway. Conversions are extremely unlikely. Yet, the public is wary of this, and it makes sense. We've all seen historic homes get chopped up into thoughtless and unsafe apartments. Well, this is no longer a possibility because new building codes have been adopted since that house you saw that was chopped up that will prevent this from happening. These codes, especially the commercial code, which is applicable to a triplex and greater, are so much more advanced in the realm of fire safety than how older homes and multiplexes were commonly built. Their implementation in a conversion would be extremely invasive and infeasible to an existing older home. Fire-rated walls, special doors and seals, fire-rated structural connections, special duct openings, sprinkler system piping, sprinkler riser rooms, fire department access points, and more all make this an extremely unlikely scenario and frankly, a poor choice for an investment on the part of a developer. Additional demolition and preservation efforts may be positive, but these should be done outside of this proposal and within the overlay districts. Demolition protection should be based on protecting the historic value of what is already existing, not legislated based on what is being proposed to be built. Given these and other points raised in the comments, let's say yes to this positive change now. Let's say yes to modifying it to be better now, And let's say yes to building on it as soon as it passes. I'd like to thank everyone who has worked on this and engaged with it. Zoning policy is notoriously challenging to update, and I appreciate everyone's efforts to make Knoxville a more connected, free, and equitable city.
Thank you.
And this is on behalf of Christina Bowler, and I have not practiced this at all or even read it all the way through. So here goes. This is comments from Christina Bowler of 302 Douglas Avenue, AIA, meaning she is a registered architect. I'm speaking as both a locally practicing architect and a Knoxville resident of more than 10 years who has lived in multiple neighborhoods affected by this proposal, as both a tenant and property owner. I'm here to speak in support of this application because I believe Knoxville's zoning ordinance dating back more than 50 years have imposed a non-traditional and anti-urbanist spirit on the heart of Knoxville neighborhoods, which historically featured housing diversity, walkability, and streetcar transit oriented toward the working class. Although many have expressed concerns that the character of our historic neighborhoods will be compromised by the construction of middle housing types, I feel exactly the opposite. Middle housing types are specifically characteristic of our historic neighborhoods. However, after reviewing the proposed amendments in conjunction with city lot data provided by Knoxville, Knox County Planning, I am not convinced that they would result in tremendous increase in middle housing development opportunities in our city. The housing type with the greatest number of development opportunities are duplexes, which were permitted by right in the heart of Knoxville neighborhoods prior to the adoption of RECODE, though the dimensional standards were a bit different. Although allowing duplexes in our neighborhoods is a huge step in the right direction, I don't think this proposal provides much opportunity for the other middle housing types listed. Triplexes, for example, are typically infeasible to build due to the added cost incurred by the switch from the residential to commercial building code. It is unclear from the data planning has released how many lots could support a quadplex, but it is a significantly smaller percentage than that for duplexes and triplexes. The number of opportunities to build townhouses is even smaller. You might argue that these housing types are currently permitted along the corridors, so why allow them to densify our neighborhoods? With a 70-foot height limit in the CG2, the highest and best use of these properties is within a completely different scale. Land values driven by this scale make building middle housing types here impractical. Although I am sympathetic to various concerns regarding demolition or subdivision of existing homes, I don't think either of these situations will be cost-effective and practical in most cases due to property acquisition, demolition, and construction cost, as well as modern building code requirements.
I'll let you run over on the first one a little bit, so if you could wrap up, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, sir. There's, well, I suppose that can be wrapped up. There's a few more paragraphs.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Let's see here. Dustin Durham. And then Mr. Sale will be next.
Dustin Durham, 1422 Cornelia Street, Apartment 2. And this is just a rehash of comments that I have left you all, so you should have these. And I'll try to make it a crisp 2 minutes. So I'm here to speak in support of the proposed amendment from the city. I won't get into the specifics because that's what you find people are for. But on the whole, I do believe that this is a proposal that is a critical first step in helping to remedy our housing crisis. As well as allowing the necessary incremental increase in neighborhood density that's required for an effective and robust transit system. As a commissioner on the Knoxville Transportation Authority, I'm both proud and humbled to have been a part of the city's efforts to make CAT a better system for everybody. And the areas that have been chosen for the city's effort to start re-legalizing missing middle housing are primarily in neighborhoods that will be a 10-minute or less walk to bus routes that will soon be 15 minutes, which is great. Transit systems like this will allow many people to live what I call a car-light life, which is what I'm currently living, which means that they can utilize their car as little as once a week, maybe less, to do all of their errands. Otherwise, they can walk, bike, or use the bus. Having neighborhoods like this not only allows us to begin to tackle the 50% plus of our community emissions that come from ground transportation, but it allows us as citizens to better interact with our surroundings because we're no longer having to view our home from behind the isolated screen of a car. Better transportation systems allow for better community interaction. And in order to have better transportation systems, we have to have two things: more frequency in transit and better land use. We've done our job at the KTA in providing more frequency to these areas, and now it is up to you as the Planning Commission to do your job and update the land uses to allow the needed density in these places to let our buses work well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sale.
Hanson Sales, 609 Weisgarber. I am here on behalf of the East Tennessee Realtors. First, I just want to point out our association was proud to bring the idea of hiring Opticoast Design in the first place to the city of Knoxville a few years ago, and we just want to acknowledge that the plan that we have before us is extremely limited and will not do much to increase housing supply. And while we support missing middle, this ordinance really needs more time and attention. Just as we did during Recode, we're making one same mistake, the same mistake that left many of our historic neighborhoods legally non-conforming. We picked dimensional standards out of thin air, not based on the existing lot sizes in our city. And only this week, a month after this plan was first published, did we start doing an analysis of the existing vacant lots and whether they would work with the standards that we have. That's the opposite way that we should be, and the Opticoast report did recommend that we do it the other way. Secondly, the missing middle report also identified parking requirements as a barrier to missing middle. The report recommended that we require no more than one parking space per unit. In other words, one parking space is the maximum, yet this proposal makes one parking space our minimum. Lastly, these standards haven't been tested in practice, something that the Opticoast report also recommended. And instead, today, the proposal that we have is untested standards that also exclude the possibility of seeking a variance through BZA, which ultimately undermines the purpose of having a variance process in the first place. We need more conversation. This proposal is limited in its scope, and also has some deficiencies that I think need to be addressed before we move forward, because ultimately, if we want to see missing middle, we need a good plan and not just pass something because it makes us feel good, but something that will work.
Thank you, Mr. Sale. Let's see here. Kathleen Moriarty. Is she here? Okay, not here. Okay, how about Ellen Lee?
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Ellen Lee, and I live in Fourth and Gill, and my family has lived in the house that I live in for over 130 years. So I can give you a firsthand perspective of how moving single-family neighborhood into too many multi-unit structures affects the stewardship of a neighborhood. And that took 50 years or over a half a decade to reclaim the demise that it caused in our neighborhood. And I hate to admit it, I was part of that years, but anyway. I did come here today to let you be aware, to see if you were aware that that in places like Northampton, Massachusetts, and other cities were using the infill guidelines that the Knox County Metropolitan Planning Commission and East Tennessee Design Center are using those to solve the problems of infill housing that destroyed the character of their historic neighborhoods. Experts had noted, and we had already experienced, that multi-units often have a cookie-cutter look and enforce discontinuing and disarming neighborhoods and take the harmony away from what the setting and the character is. I put my glasses on so I can see this. I'm not totally against the missing middle concept. I think there's things that could work and help in that situation. I don't think that it is something that will help a historic overlay neighborhood in some of these older neighborhoods that have struggled. A developer may put more money in their pocket, but we as a city, revitalizing old neighborhoods can create a real problem of squashing a sustainable revitalization if we implement a missing middle type plan that would cause a decline in the desirability of young families to invest in the areas. And the young families are what have built our neighborhood back up. I know it, I lived it. I used to beg my parents to move out, and then I moved back to Knoxville and moved back in because families were coming back to the neighborhood, kids going up and down the street in their buggies and their bicycles. And that came from single family ownership. And
Thank you, Ms. Lee.
is that it?
Yeah.
All right. I
gave you a little grace on that one, but
Thank
I gave
you.
you a little extra time, yeah. Mr. Bob Wetzel.
Good afternoon. My name is Bob Wetzel. I live at 1015 Luttrell Street in the 4th and Gill neighborhood. I've been there for the last 43 years as we made a huge transition from a run-down, beat-up place that they drove the interstate through to where we are right now. So I'm here speaking with a lot of experience and speaking from the heart. First thing I want to do is thank you all for taking the time to serve on this commission. There's a lot of hard work that has to go through here, and y'all have heard a lot of stuff today. The stuff on Marble Alley, a lot of focus on one little small area there. What you're being asked to look at by the city today is a rezoning of 26% of the properties in the city. They don't call it a rezoning, but the land use regulations for 26% of the people in the city are going to change as this ordinance is put into place. And I'm speaking just for myself. There are neighbors. I have a neighbor, one in particular, thinks this is a pretty good plan. But that'd be the mayor. But I'm here for myself today. And I'm okay with on vacant lots. If this is going to happen on vacant lots, I think that's great. And in 4th and Gill, that would add 10 to 12 potential more units than the zoning already allows. But it also puts the other 280 historic properties at risk for the conversions. Not worried about the demolitions, but the conversions. It's happened in the past. It happened in the middle of the last century. And it took us 50 years to work our way back out of it. We are very concerned about going down that road again. So I am, my wife is, a number of people I've talked to are very, very concerned about that issue. We're also concerned about the issue of sharing the burden that the downtown neighborhoods, us, Park Ridge, Old North, and Lonsdale, Mechanicsville, we're the ones being asked to share. The most dense areas of the city are the ones that are being asked to share the burden of solving the housing problem, while the least dense parts of the city are not being asked to share in that burden. So that seems to be an equity issue to me that needs to be resolved. And thirdly, this whole thing seems to be on a bit of a rocket docket. I know from the inside, if you're on the inside, it doesn't seem like one, but from the outside, there were 2 public hearings a couple of weeks ago. It goes to city council, and now it comes here, and you guys are meeting a week early. I would say we just need to slow down just a little bit and talk some more about this and see if there's not a way to get to where everybody wants. I know our neighborhood is very supportive of the idea of multifamily housing. We have it. And if more of it had, we just had 8 townhomes built on 4th Avenue. Y'all ought to get over and take a look at it. That's what missing middle is going to look like. And by the way, those units sold average price $355,000 per unit for 1,100 square feet. So that's the kind of units that you're talking about here. And as far as the conversions are getting too expensive, that may be true. I have a sense it may be true, but I'd certainly like some documentation, or as the guy from the Realtor said, we need to test these things. We need to be testing this and talking about this. So anyway, those are my three concerns. And I would just ask that y'all postpone this and we spend more time talking about it. And I heard Cheryl say that they'd be here in a couple more months with a more comprehensive plan. Seems like we ought to be talking comprehensively rather than nitpicking it along. So those are my words. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wetzel. Okay. Mr. Bentley Marlowe.
Hi there. Could we pull up page 4 of my comment? It has a modified table 4.4, please.
Is there another voice we could hear from while we're waiting on that? Got it? Okay.
Scroll down. Down, table 4-4, please. Yes, that one, thank you. Okay, so I'm Bentley Marlowe. I live at 322 Douglas Avenue over in Mechanicsville, which is one of the older older neighborhoods in the city and part of the TDR. And I, like Hanson, am very concerned that some of these lot widths are just made up. I've spent a great deal of time studying this over the last 20 years, both as a builder, started as just fixing my own house and fixing my neighbors' houses, and ultimately owning a significant part of Mechanicsville. And I can tell you that the city's proposed lot widths create a problem. The data that Amy just sent me right before this meeting evidences that. But I went to the actual book written by the principal founder of Opticos, studied the scan report for Knoxville, Athens, Georgia, Greenville, South Carolina, and the preliminary version of one out of somewhere in North Carolina that Opticos has been hired to do. And I've come up with the numbers that are actually documented by Opticos as working. And if you just look at it quickly, notice that the city's proposal for duplex side-by-side and duplex stacked, same width, but we're stacking the duplex. Why does it need the lot the same width? If you notice, Opticos never makes a distinction between lot sizes for triplex and fourplex. Nonetheless, the city decided to widen the fourplex requirement. And that 55-foot makes it inapplicable to most of the lots. So what are we actually trying to do? The city down at Multiplex, and I discussed this with Brian Berry, and they did make a modification there. I think the city's revised numbers take it from 80 to 100 down to 70 to 85, maybe, Brian. Opticos report says 65 to 70 feet. And if you go down to the next page, Opticos identifies other types of missing middle housing styles, the multiplex large, the cottage courtyard, and then the carriage house. And I find it curious that the city's presentation, each of their illustrations, all documented, the drawings on all the city's websites. There's a carriage house with duplexes, triplexes in their drawings, yet they excluded those. So I would say that we should be more true to the experts. We hired them, we've listened to their report, we've had their presentation. They know what they're doing. They're doing this nationwide. The table I've proposed as an alternative here is true to their reports and their studies from nationwide in cities like ours. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Deb Thomas.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I don't want to try to duplicate what other people have said, and I spent most of the meeting trying to cut down what I have to say also. I served my neighborhood organization, Oakwood Lincoln Park, for over 5 years and was president during RECODE. This is a good beginning for some of the middle housing stuff. There are great details in the plans for setbacks and blending with existing housing. I think there's a lot more details that need to be worked out. Neighbors repeatedly requested RN2 zoning during recode, so that's an issue. In contrast to the recode, the city had 2 meetings for this issue for the impacted areas, none in Edgewood, Mechanicsville, Beaumont, or Lonsdale. The pictures presented were a vague map with illegible color codes on an 8.5 by 11-inch sheet of paper. They've chosen moderate income neighborhoods where they expect less pushback. The other 2 neighborhoods, Old North and 4th and Gill, have historic overlay protection, which protects them from demolition. There was mention of demolition and how it's not feasible. That's not true. I studied our neighborhood and walked it for a potential feasible historic overlay that would have allowed vinyl siding and windows. We've had multiple partial and complete demolitions, even in the last 5 years, over 20 in the last 20 years, half of them from the city. So just keep that in mind. Other issues, there hasn't been sufficient notice, which was already mentioned. If proceeding, the city needs to be a citywide effort and include all neighborhoods as well as RN1. Council members mentioned this at the workshop. That takes a little bit of the pressure off of these already very dense neighborhoods. Oakwood, Lincoln Park, Lonsdale, Edgewood are the heart of Knoxville. We receive infill design guidelines. These neighborhoods need demolition protection, not necessarily historic overlay. Yes, we have bus routes, but most households have 2 or more cars on a 50-foot wide lot and may not have a driveway or alley access. Adding duplexes adds more vehicles, which stresses drainage issues and on-street parking. There's no protections to ensure that housing that is built or added onto will be affordable. The point of recode was to revitalize commercial areas with mixed use. Utilize this first. Don't throw existing neighborhoods under the bus route. Established neighborhood residents have nowhere to go. This will not help. A housing advocate from Nashville said to do everything you can to keep people where they are. 5 years ago, there were 20 empty houses within a block of my house. Now there are 3 or 4 rehabbed houses that are either second houses or Airbnbs. So what can officials do? Tax Airbnb at a higher rate, particularly if not occupied by an owner. Other cities are changing their Airbnb regulations to accommodate housing. Only allow the new regulations to take place on the empty lots, already mentioned. Give protection from demolition to heart of Knoxville neighborhoods, similar to the historic neighborhoods. Guarantee affordability. Expand the zone to all neighborhoods, including RN1. Hire more planners, inspectors, and
Ms.
codes
Thomas, if you
enforcement
could wrap up,
officers
please.
to deal with our growing city and increase tax base. Thank you for your
Thank you.
time. We need more time on this.
Thank you. Let's see. Mr. Gordon Coker.
Gordon Coker, 1000 Eleanor Street. I think everything has been said. I'm actually agreeing with the gentleman from the Realtor Association, which I can't quite believe, that we need a delay on this. I went to both meetings. I read the Opticos report twice. It's very confusing. I didn't know anything about the conversion aspect of it until the public meeting. I have no problem with building along the corridors. I have no problem with infill housing with the guidelines that are there. But I do have a problem with the conversion factor. In the early 90s, we went from R2, R2A, whatever, to R1A at the request of the Planning Commission at that time to preserve the housing stock of our neighborhood. And now we're going the other way. And so I think we need to slow down a little bit. I'm asking for a delay on this. And so maybe neighbors can get a little bit more information. I think it's been too fast. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, on the council, right? Okay. What's that? Yep. Commission? Commissioner Shelso.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everyone, for speaking. A couple questions for maybe Director Brooks or staff. When it comes to the conversion guideline or part of this, without the conversion part of this, would a homeowner within this proposal still be able to do a conversion? To say from a single family to a duplex?
They would need to follow the base standards, is how I would interpret this, of the code, rather than take advantage of the middle housing.
Okay. And so the base standards don't have the design guideline part that's in the missing middle proposal.
Correct. They don't have the design, the dimensional standards, and also the development types would be
Okay.
different.
So by having a conversion part of this missing middle, in my mind, that helps protect the appearance of what those homes look like currently, as opposed to doing whatever,
Yes,
right?
that was the intention.
Okay. When it comes to the lot width requirements, I want to make sure I understand the 20% variance that can be, I guess, sort of staff reviewed. So, for example, if it were a 45-foot lot, that would be 20% of the 45 feet, right? So 9 feet.
Yes.
So that would mean that you could do this on a 36-foot wide lot, correct? And so that 20% goes all the way up. You know, if some of these types require an 80-foot lot, that would be up to a 16-foot reduction. So you could actually have a 64-foot wide lot, theoretically. So I think that a better way to address, but I think that gives quite a bit of variance to address the lot sizes that we have that go all the way from really, you know, a bulk of them being 40 feet at the small end all the way up to, you know, 50 to 60. I think there's a lot of leeway there. So I think if we were to look at adjusting lot sizes, I'd be more comfortable increasing the variance amount from, say, 20 to 25% that staff can review to make sure that that fits within the neighborhood, as opposed to just blanket adjusting all of the lot widths that they would then have by right to make sure that, you know, a multiplex, theoretically, you could maybe have a multiplex right next to a whole row of single-family homes, and if staff can review that and say, no, that's not quite, doesn't quite fit there, if they have a little more leeway. So if we are going to look at changing that, I think that would be a better approach than a blanket table change. You know, in terms of some of the other public comments, I think that, you know, the TDR plan or land use classification is something that the city and planning has undergone, looking at what our city has in terms of traditional neighborhoods being having alleys or sidewalks, increasing density. Those types of amenities really fit well with increasing density. So I understand the market conditions and the importance of increasing housing supply, but I also think that you know, we've got multiple sides here saying, you know, this is too much. Some saying this is too little. I really think approaching TDR is maybe kind of the right middle ground to do this. And it's not necessarily about sharing the burden of, you know, making more suburban areas have some of these. It's just they don't have the capability to increase that density in a manner that we don't. I think we would have worse unintended consequences if we did that immediately without seeing how things would play out. Additionally, when it comes to, you know, our commercial corridors and, you know, RECODE's goal of allowing mixed use and housing on those, I mean, that's the problem of the market determining, you know, how much land goes for in commercially zoned areas. You're always going to have a really tough time when there's a really higher and better use, or a potentially higher and better use of, you know, a retail chain store being able to come in and basically demand a really high land price. So in terms of where residential currently is. I think this is a really great plan. I fully support it, and I'll be voting in favor of this for sure. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Higgins.
Thank you. And I too want to say I appreciate all the speakers that we had today and all the opinions. And I think that it's really interesting that we saw such a wide variety of opinions on this, of some in complete opposition and thinking that this is the wrong approach, and some saying that this is spot on and exactly what we need, and some saying we're not going far enough. And frankly, I agree that this has got to be just the first step, because we do need to go further, and we do need more housing options. And it was nice to hear from neighbors that live in these areas, because what's interesting is these are some of our historic neighborhoods that they're some of the most desired neighborhoods and have incredible values, and they're the ones that were built on what we are trying to now bring back. So the historic character of those neighborhoods, like 4th and Gill, is full of small instances of missing middle housing that I think really brings that character. So I'm excited to see, hopefully if we are able to move forward with more missing middle options, how that will continue to grow the other neighborhoods in our city. But there's a saying that a good compromise is no one is left happy, and I think that this is a really good start and a good compromise for starting to address this. And so, even though I agree that we should be including the R1 areas, I think we should also be giving more leeway to the dimensional standards, and there's a lot more that we can be doing, and I hope that the city will continue to pursue more of those. And there's the Realtors Association mentioned the trying to try out some of the practices, and I know this wasn't the intention of that comment, but I do think that if this is a start, this is a good opportunity for us to see how these end up playing out, how these new allowances play out. And then there's also been a lot of comments about increasing density along the corridors, and I think if you look at the map that's on the screen right now, you'll notice that the corridors are not really highlighted in this. The areas directly along the corridors are kind of left out, and the reason for that is the corridors already have a commercial zoning, which most of those commercial zonings allow for multifamily housing, options and different mixes of uses. So we already have the opportunities on the corridor. We need to look at these other areas of opportunity. So I support this. I would not be in support of postponing. I think that, again, if we really want to start making changes and impacting where we're growing in terms of improving our housing stock and options, we need to start getting things in code. And then this is an example of responding to recode with adjustments and coming back and adding other things. Like, we will continue to do that. So I hope that better tweaks will come of this as it in the coming months and years. But I really think that this is an incredible first start, and I applaud staff and the city for working so hard and putting this together. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Higgins. I think as far as you had cited the commercial corridors, I think some people intend, or their desire is to see a policy from the city that would promote development in the commercial corridors where it may not make economic sense on its own. Maybe some public-private policy partnerships, such as, the only thing we've seen in the commercial corridors are really projects supported by tax credits. And so maybe some, the pilot and TIF type policies, I think that's some of the, there've been pretty wide conversation about those commercial corridors, and I think many people are kind of inferring that we look at that as a potential kickstart to that. But appreciate your comments. Commissioner Adams.
I just want to pick up on what you were saying about that. And I am assuming that in Ms. Ball's comments about a comprehensive plan coming later, that is the kind of stuff that we can start to anticipate coming our way as part of a holistic sort of filling of all of the arrows in the quiver for ways to address the crisis. That's what I'm hoping for. And I concur with Commissioner Higgins and Commissioner Selcho about this being a really good first step. It's not perfect. And I think the fact that we've got all these voices today speaking to different push-pulls, like too fast, too slow, more or less, like I think that tells us that it's not perfect, but we're getting a lot closer. And I'm not in favor of postponing. I think that we've got a really good template here to move forward with. I have one question, though, and that is because almost everyone has said, yes, this looks, whether they're completely in favor or in favor with some compromise or some changes, there is a desire to keep working on it. And I think that it is a struggle for this body, all of the bodies, to get back to it. So I'm looking for some guidance from planning about how can we, in the proposal that we have today, include some type of confirmed return so that we could come back to this in a year. I'm not sure what the magic amount of time is, but to get a real report on, okay, we've been doing this for this period of time, what has worked, what has not worked, what do we want to adjust, but to hold ourselves accountable, just like we would if we were piloting some new software or something else. We would get back to it and look at it and then make it better. So can we do that?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Commissioner Adams, for bringing that up. I think it's within this body's purview to direct staff within the next year or at the end of 12 months that you would like a report back on what has worked, just exactly what you just said. What has worked well? What would we recommend for improvements? What have we been hearing? And then you could even open it up to the public and invite additional comment.
Is that something that needs to be included in this proposal? Or are you saying that that's something that the commission would need to bring up itself?
I think stating it on the record is enough to put it on our work program for something like this. The recommendation before you is specific to code amendments, and I would say that type of recommendation doesn't go into a code. Does that make sense?
All right. So as long as I've stated it out loud, it's on the record. I would like to make a motion to approve this. It's a bit different than how we typically look at a case, so I'm not exactly sure how to say that appropriately. But if I can make a move to approve the amendment to the Knoxville City Code as outlined in 10B 2308, if that's an appropriate way to phrase it.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve per the recommendation by Commissioner Adams, seconded by Commissioner Higgins. Commissioner Biggs.
In the same vein of kind of Commissioner Adams' questioning and thinking, just curious if, as part of our learning process, if the recommendations as part of this missing middle proposal included lessons learned from other cities that have maybe done similar kind of programs before, and what the impacts had been on conversions and demolition specifically, since that was kind of an off-sided concern. Do we know anything about maybe other comparable cities and what the results has been of programs that might be a year or two ahead of this?
It's a great question. We don't currently have that prepared. We'd be happy to reach out and compile that for you. That was a question that came up during the council workshop as well.
Commissioner Shell, are you done, Commissioner Biggs? Okay, Commissioner Shelso.
This that was handed out to us about 4.6E, I think there were a couple of last minute changes from what's on our agenda and on the website. I think after reading these, we want to incorporate that in what we send on to city council.
That would be great. Thank you for bringing that up. That was something that staff wanted to call to your attention. So it's section 4.6E. We have additional copies that we can pass out. It's really an attempt at some clarification of language, if you all don't mind passing that down.
My assumption was that was part of what I was approving in my motion.
Okay, we just need it. Maybe we should read it into the record. Yes, thank you.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Commissioner Huber.
Yeah, so this is a tough one because it does seem to be moving pretty fast on one hand, and on the other hand, just like the gentleman said, it has had a lot of internal look at it. So, but I don't think it goes far enough. I am on board with moving it forward. However, I do think it's imperative that we do go back and look at it intently. Mr. Marlowe's had a lot of really good suggestions that aren't necessarily being adopted in here, and he's the one out there, boots on the ground, doing these things every day. So I have a lot of respect for that. Again, in R1, I mean, we're talking about R2, R3, and R4 in these certain areas, but we're leaving out R1. From a strict infill situation, I think there's no reason to not include R1, in my opinion. And even there, I think we need to look further outside of the areas, the TDR areas, to keep it moving, because there's a lot of opportunity in more of the greenfield areas of the city of Knoxville to increase some of the housing in appropriate areas, in the right ones. So I just wanted to reiterate, I think it needs to move forward, but I wholeheartedly think it needs to be reviewed again, sometime probably in the next 12 months to see
Thank
what
you.
we can do.
Commissioner Boyer.
So I would have to say that I think we are moving quickly. I think it's a little premature for a strategic plan to be put in. It may seem fast on the outside, it seems fast on the inside to me as well, Mr. Wetzel. I heard the pros and cons, as Commissioner Higgins mentioned and Commissioner Adams. What I heard were a lot of cons from residents who were right there. I heard pros from non-residents who were advocating for a policy change. I think everyone agrees that this needs to be thoughtfully done. I don't think there's anyone who thinks that this is an issue that does not need more attention. I just think when you talk about strategy and thoughtful consideration of what and how should be included, and also for quite broad, meaningful concern, I think to Mr. Wetzel's 26% was a figure you used of impact, 280 historic homes at risk for conversion. I think sometimes we do go quickly and we don't consider the impact, the risks associated with it. What are we trading off? What are the consequences? I think that we need to go back through those steps, not to say that we won't end up at some point, but I think we will have done it in more of a consensus basis with a lot more communication and a lot more input. And I respect the research that's been done so far. Meeting with 40 people or certain things like that, I just think more needs to go into it for the tiny impact that it even covers, the tiny number of lots, but then also the conversion possibilities. I know the individual didn't get to be here, Christina Bowler, but I think she had a lot of great points that were read into the record, and I appreciated those. So I just wanted to make those comments, not against having the conversation, but
it's hard to hand out something and vote on it also, and then say we also need more review. I think that time for review is before we pass something and then have unintended consequences.
Thank you, Commissioner Boyer. Ms. Ball, I have a couple questions for you, if I may. One is, I understand the limited rollout here. Is the long-term plan to roll this out also into RN1?
That's a really great question. I think that at this juncture, the plan is to see how the reaction is to this portion of the plan. And we do not currently have a specific plan to roll this out into RN1, but that does not mean that it is not, that it's off the table. We haven't gone there. We felt like this was a really good, important first step. A couple of the additional steps that we do sort of have a specific interest in is pursuing some of the additional types of missing middle housing in appropriate locations for that. We had talked before about the idea of a pre-approved plan book, and that's something we're also really interested in pursuing. That's very difficult to do until you have the guardrails that this particular set of this proposal puts forward first. That sort of has to be the first step before we do that. So I don't know that that's specifically on or off the table. I think it's one of those things that could become on the table, but is not maybe at present.
So is it fair to say that if, the rollout went reasonably well, that stand to reason it would expand into RN1?
I don't know that we have vetted that particular zoning as a part of this planning process.
Okay.
And so I'm hesitant to say yes, because I do think that it requires that vetting process that we have gone through, that Opticos also went through with us, and that was not a part of that plan.
You know, I could see being in favor of this. However, I've heard a lot, just like Commissioner Boyer had communicated, and from residents, and I heard too much, too little, and too fast, but I didn't hear too slow. And I am a little concerned because there are some components of this that I'm not sure has been vetted, in the sense that, one, I don't think we have broadly applied these types to the existing properties. We have applied some, but I don't think we've done it broadly, or maybe sufficiently. Secondly, I heard from some bike walk representatives, I think, or folks that were with bike walk, and I'm really surprised that we didn't talk about removing parking minimums. When you look at, I looked at the urban zoning overlay in Nashville, Tennessee, and if there's ever a poster child community for this type of development, it's probably 12th Avenue South. And 12th Avenue South, as I understood what they did, they took their maximums, they took their minimums, parking minimums, and made them maximums, and removed their parking minimums for a number of good reasons. One is on-street parking slows traffic speed, and it also protects pedestrians on sidewalks, and in many cases, bikers in bike lanes. And so I just wonder, has there been any conversation about that, and where do we stand on it, and why didn't we have it in this plan?
There was extensive conversation, and we do agree that that parking on the street is traffic calming, and it is does make streets easier and safer for pedestrians. I don't think we disagree with that. Our current code requires 2 parking spaces per unit in our current code, and we made the decision to cut that in half. And for Knoxville and the comments that we were being very aggressively pushed, we had a stakeholder event, and when Opticos was in town, and every single person that made a comment at that event was telling us, do not decrease parking standards. We've cut it in half. For Knoxville, we felt like that was a really aggressive and good first step for moving forward with this particular proposal.
I think, and I could be recollecting inaccurately, but I think Opticos maybe commented that that could be the barrier when you apply the parking minimums. Is that?
When we had our additional consultation with Opticos, because of the specific housing types that we're selecting and the geography that we have selected, he agreed with us that one parking space, Tony Perez agreed that one parking space per unit was appropriate. Some of the larger types, in particular, there's a lot more opportunity to reduce that. And he also agreed with the idea of taking an incremental approach to moving forward with missing middle housing.
Okay, thank you. And is it fair to say that maybe these TDR communities were probably many designed or built kind of pre-vehicle, so they may not be really, we're retrofitting cars basically is what we're doing into these communities. Is that a fair comment?
I would say yes, but I want to be very clear that that is not my area of expertise,
Okay,
and I would
fair enough.
probably want to default to the planning staff on that.
Fair enough. I am not in opposition of this. I could very likely support it. I am really concerned that we may not have vetted this. You know, you typically want to draw it before you build it. And I'm just concerned that I don't see how a little more planning could hurt. And I'm not trying to thwart your motion, but I would certainly be open to some level of postponement if this doesn't pass. So Commissioner Higgins.
Thank you. I have a couple additional comments and some clarification. Two things I want to clarify. When I was referring to the corridors, I've heard comments that a higher density or missing middle should only be allowed in the corridors. And so that's more specifically what I was referring to. I'd also like to clarify that a high number of the people that we heard from today in support are neighbors. I see a whole section over there of people that spoke and mentioned that they live in these areas and a few others. So I think more than half of who we heard from who said that this is on the right track and this is good were neighbors. So I want to clarify and point that out. And then in regards to some of the comments that have come up, you know, I would be in favor of the parking minimum going down, being lower. I would be in favor of the lot width minimums being lower. And I do think that this does need more refining, but I don't think that keeping it in a back and forth, the ping pong, I'd like to see it in practice and see it get, implemented, and then also be, a living document that we can adjust. And that, to Commissioner Adams' point, I think that reviewing it again later for adjustments is a good approach. So I really wouldn't want to hold it up because, in processes like this, we could spend the next decade talking about this and refining it and changing it every month, and we would still go to take a vote in 10 years, and half the people would be happy with it and half the people would be upset with it. And we're trying to respond to something that's been a longstanding issue and a very high need that the nation as a whole is trying to respond to, and that's the need for more housing. So I think that I agree that we should continue to improve it, but I don't think that we should prevent implementing it in order to continue that. So.
Thank you. Commissioner Levinson.
I feel it needs a lot of work. and I wouldn't be opposed to sending it back, but I do believe, you got to eat the elephant one bite at a time. But, waiting a year in order to hear how we're doing, in my opinion, is not acceptable. If we're going to do it, you got to do it. And I guess my questions is, have we approached this? Have we approached people that are going to be involved in this? Because those are the people who we have to be concerned with right now. Are there any incentives for people to come into the city and absorb these properties and make them into the middle? My problem is I don't know how they can be in the middle. With the costs of building and the costs of everything, I mean, these are all going to still be really expensive. So I guess as I look at it is there's a whole lot of work to do. And I think that a lot of the time that the city needs to do is to find the people that are going to do it and figure out what they need in order to accomplish it. I've heard all this today, and it's really neat, and I'm really for it. But it's all over the place. It's more than I can absorb. God only knows how you all are. So I feel we should move forward, but I'm not for a year. I'm more like, let's see what we do in the first quarter. I want to hear who we're taking this to. I want to hear how this is going to be successful, not just, well, here's some games to play. It's time to make it work. And it isn't going to be a year from now, if I may put that in the record. Okay? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Adams.
Thanks. I just wanted to, reiterate that I think that
Can you bring your mic closer, please?
I'm giving permission to touch the mic. I think that the approach that the city has taken and that planning has taken with this is to look at where is the greatest likelihood for success for the first foray into this. And that by doing that, we then are able to develop some very successful models. Because I think a lot of what we hear right now is fear. Fear because we don't have a lot of models to point to of this is how this worked really well. But if we are able to move forward with this, then we have paved a road to potentially have those models and to be able to look at those and say, well, this is how it works well, and then build upon that. Because I think everyone agrees this is not the whole solution, to your point. But if we start now, we can continue getting all of these other ideas in that start working on corridors, that start working on other areas that have models that can be pointed to. Okay, this is what works. So that is where my feeling of we need to go ahead and start. Let's get it rolling, and then let's return to it and make sure that we are using those models and building on the best ones.
Commissioner Adams, I would comment that we do have I thought I cited a good model, and that's why I pause and say, are we following that very model, which is 12th Avenue South? So that's, I think a little more time wouldn't hurt. I don't have a strong opinion, but I just don't see how it could hurt to take a closer look at that. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I am not as familiar with 12th Avenue South as you are, but what I hear is that's Nashville.
Sure.
And that this is Knoxville. And that there's been a request to look at other cities and those successful cities. And I think we can always learn from what other communities are doing. But one of the things I appreciate in what Ms. Ball said was that, Opticos and some other voices were saying, hey, throw the ball further. And that this proposal is saying, we're really not sure that toss is where we are right now as a community. So they have taken those recommendations and worked with those to put something together that could work for Knoxville right now, but to build on that. And that's where I think you start to get into other communities and can pull that in later, but at the moment, I don't know if it's the right first step. That would be my answer to that.
Commissioner Scelso.
The great thing about a long meeting is you can do research during it. To some of your points that you brought up, which I think are good things to discuss, 12 Avenue South has a really good corridor plan specific just to 12 Avenue South, and those are the types of things I know we've looked at in Bearden, and so maybe that's a kind of a next step. And this is sort of, in my opinion, this is a policy that's just supposed to be a little bit more broad.
No,
than
this one,
just that.
when I just cited 12 Avenue South, but
Right.
the urban zoning overlay actually encompasses
All of
their
the city
traditional
center,
neighborhoods.
Yeah. And I see that as probably the next step where this should go as well. In looking at RN1, RN1 looks like it accounts for 9% of the lots within TDR, but it only accounts for 0.62 of the vacant lots within TDR, about 53 vacant lots, maybe it's 52. So I don't see that impact being huge. And one reason I would be hesitant to include RN1 is I think that would make it more difficult to easily expand this policy without having to go back and fix, okay, well, if we're going to take this outside of 640, is RN1 appropriate for some of this? Maybe not. That's where more neighborhood-focused plans, I think, would be appropriate with the use of like an overlay to expand it instead of just a TDR or a land use classification. And so I think excluding RN1 right now makes sense with the plan that's
To be clear, I
proposed,
wasn't advocating for that. I was just asking what the long-term plan was.
Mhm. So just wanted to add how it's minimal to this immediate plan. And I think it's a good first step.
Commissioner Boyer.
I guess to your point, Commissioner Scelso, I mean, if we're doing research during the meeting, it just,
Researching Nashville, not Knoxville.
if we're researching points of interest important enough to bring to Commission's attention during the meeting, I believe it goes to my point that we send developers and neighborhoods away for 30 days to go have conversations, or 60 days. We send them away all the time and say, I know you've got bills to pay, and I know you've got people on the clock, and I know you've got concern, but we send them away and say, go discuss it a little bit more. This, I think, is much even bigger and more important, not dismissing that the issue exists, but it's not just 52 vacant lots either, which I believe on one hand argues my point in that it's just a small, tiny drop in the bucket. It's not going to solve our middle housing problem. And why, yes, it's a good step forward. It's those unintended consequences I get worried about. Or on one hand, it's too narrow, and then on the other hand, it's too broad. It still impacts the existing homes. All of them. They could all be retrofitted, right? Is that correct? So here's the thing. We just had a great conversation about 121 Union Avenue and 0 State Street, and we had a very close vote on that. And the quotes I took down, because I was anticipating this conversation, were spot zoning in the oldest neighborhood in our city for such a small percentage should not happen. What would be our oldest city in our oldest districts, our oldest areas in our neighborhoods? Small zone, such a small space to have. I mean, so we're talking about very small on one hand, and yet also very large, but spot zoning in the oldest neighborhood in our city for such a small percentage. It just rings so true to me. And if anything, I just feel like, if nothing else, that moves us forward to creating more opportunity for discussion and bringing all these great minds together to give this another more thorough look.
It is 51 vacant RN1 lots.
I said
in
52,
TDR.
so maybe it's
Yeah.
51. All right, I concede to 51 instead of 52.
Commissioner Higgins, don't you hate it when they turn your own words against
know,
you? Happens
I
to
know.
me all the time. Go ahead.
It's the
I would like to clarify that I think that this is the opposite of spot zoning. I think that this is really trying to take a broad problem. I think that it is a baby step, but I don't think it is a spot zone, and I don't think it's out of character. You know, the phrase spot zoning is usually used to say this is a one small instance that is out of character with the surrounding context. And I think this is the exact opposite. This is what is being proposed here, I think, is very much in character with the traditional neighborhood forms and how those were developed. So, yeah.
Commissioner Boyer.
And yet, I'm not sure it does conform with the neighborhood to have multiple units in a parking lot. Or I don't know all the architectural. I'm just a pitiful lawyer who just looks at, I like compromise and I like well thought out, but I'm not sure, even if you make the facade look the same, that having multiple units in a lot in between multiple, I don't think that is the same. I don't think it's the same. I don't think the neighbors think it's the same when that moves right next door to them. And the only reason why I was saying about the majority of the folks who spoke, or many of the folks who spoke in favor or opposed, 150 years, 25 years, 35 years of being in that and seeing the decisions made up here and the ramifications of that, and then how long it took to bring it back. That was the historic perspective I was getting to the voices that had appeared today.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Karen, get ready. So we've got a motion to recommend approval per the paragraph that was previously cited. Yeah, I don't want to go through that again. All right, so go ahead.
For the record, Commissioner Adams, I think you stated, but I want to clarify, that your motion included the modifications that were passed around today. Okay, let's go ahead and make that part of the record as part of your motion then. We can attach it to the minutes.
Okay, so this was the, what do you want me to read? This section only? And, okay, so we have a revised item in section 4.6.E, item, let's see, no, is that right? Is that?
It looks like there was a revision to
4C.
Yes.
4.
Right.
Covered porches at least 8 feet in depth, composing a minimum of 25% of the width of the street, facing elevations. This item, do I read that part or
Yes.
okay. This item may satisfy the requirement for a porch or stoop and one design element. Change that.
Council, did we need to read the portion that was read in, no?
No, I think those were already provided, so the new portions were the highlighted part there.
Everybody know what we're voting on? Everybody clear? Commissioner Higgins.
Can I just add, I know it's been stated into the record, but part of our expectation here is that this will stay in the work program and continue to be refined and come back to us with changes.
Yes, Commissioner, Ms. Karen has already added that to the motion.
Thank you.
Everybody good? Everybody clear? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Okay. Call the roll, Ms. Karen.
There we go. Thank you. Commissioner Uten?
No.
Commissioner Boyer?
No.
Commissioner Huber?
Yes.
Commissioner Shelto?
Yes.
Commissioner Browning?
No.
Commissioner Higgins?
Yes.
Commissioner Levinson?
No.
Commissioner Biggs?
Yes.
Commissioner Adams?
Yes.
Commissioner Hill?
No, only because I'm advocating for a postponement.
I have 5 each.
Okay, motion fails. Okay, anybody want to present a different motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we postpone this ordinance amendment for 60 days.
Second?
We've got a motion to postpone for 60 days by Vice Chair Uten, seconded by Commissioner Boyer. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Call the roll, Ms. Karen.
Yes, to postpone 60. Commissioner Uten?
Aye.
Commissioner Boyer?
Aye.
Commissioner Huber? Aye. Commissioner Shelto?
No.
Commissioner Browning?
Aye.
Commissioner Higgins?
No.
Commissioner Levinson?
Aye.
Commissioner Biggs?
Aye.
Commissioner Adams?
No.
Commissioner Hill?
Aye.
Seven aye.
Motion
3
carries.
nay.
If I could ask, what is the expectation with the postponement? That we will see a revision?
I would envision more development of the plan. I think there were some concerns from the neighborhood that need to be addressed. There were items that were brought forth by some of the commissioners that maybe reasons better explained. Take a deeper look at the parking, a variety of things.
And I just want to make sure that
Maybe
we're,
broader application of it. It's better to, what's the old saying, measure twice, cut once.
yeah, and I just want to make sure that we're giving proper direction as to what the, I guess, what we expect out of staff and out of the city for when they
And I
report
think
back.
more, and I think additional engagement, and I'm not being one bit critical here, but we're affecting a good number of people here. I understand why we're rolling it out in a limited way. I think that's wise. But I think more engagement with the communities. That's what we direct the developers to do.
Does
All
that mean that that's what we're asking the city to do?
I mean, I don't know that I have that would be my desire, and you all can share your desires.
I'm asking
are-
you
are-
because you said there was a desire for postponement, and I think Commissioner Higgins' question is fair. We typically do say, when you're postponing, we really think there should be more dialogue between the community and the developer. Like, I get that, so providing some guidance.
We had over 100 meetings in Recode over almost 2 years. And I think I didn't hear anybody say it was just on time or too slow out from the community. And I'm just asking that we spend just a little more time, 60 more days, conversing with the community, understanding what their concerns are, and then bring it back. And then the community will have a chance to speak to it again in 60 days. Is that specific enough, or?
I mean, I guess that you're asking the city to hold more public meetings.
I think that would be good. When I say more community engagement, I think that would be good. Absolutely. I mean, we went into pretty much each community during Recode and had meetings.
That's because it was a code that was going across the entire.
That's right. But have we gone into each of these communities that are being affected? Maybe we have. I don't think we have. But that might be a good thing to do. All right. On to, where are we? Item number 23. Okay. Staff recommends denial of amendments as opposed to the City Zoning Code, Article 5. The CN zone has not been evaluated in relation to the creation of middle housing forms as permitting for residential uses in the CN zone occurs within plans review and inspections. Planning staff do not evaluate residential development in this zone, and further analysis would be needed from both departments. Additionally, setback reductions based on housing forms are incorporated into the city's proposed middle housing standards. All right. This is, who should I call? All right, Ms. Crockett, do you have anything to add? Okay. Okay, we got signed up to speak. Mr. Bentley Marlowe. All right. Do we have any opposition? All right, you may proceed. If you'll give your name and address, please.
Are there anyone else signed up to speak? Just so I hear, no, okay. R. Bentley Marlowe, 322 Douglas Avenue, 37921 over in Mechanicsville. So Optica's missing middle standards report, whatever, scan, that's what it was called, didn't have a scope to include CN. I think CN is very useful for this. We allow residential in CN. I heard a lot of conversation, not just at this meeting, but at many other meetings, even from council, that we should focus housing on corridors. And while that's talking about the major corridors, I mean, every one of these neighborhoods has got connectors, and they create little commercial nodes. And in some of these, particularly over in Mechanicsville, it's just not feasible, kind of like the downtown building on State Street. It's not feasible to have commercial there. But it would be great to have townhomes there. And addressing some of these setbacks, if you're using CN exclusively for residential, why do we need such a wide buffer yard? Why do we need these large setbacks if we're doing CN for residential? It just seems like we could make a little tweak there to encourage some of the vacant lots that are CN or could be CN on the corridors to become useful for townhomes. We're paying 40% tax rate, which is higher than residential. Seems like we ought to be allowed to use a little bit more of our property. Seems like a fair trade-off, particularly when we're desperate for housing. So that's sort of the spirit of what I'm going after. Now, I'm not suggesting that if you're building a tire store or a gas station, convenience store on CN that abuts a neighborhood that we modify any of the setbacks or buffer yards, only when you're using CN exclusively for residential purposes.
Commission? Commissioner Huber.
I tend to actually agree, with this. I mean, CN in the city and NC in the county are similar in the sense that they're designed to be next to residential, but it's still a commercial use. So we've imposed these heavier setbacks to protect the neighbors from a use that's going to be a little different. So, I mean, if it does come through and have a residential use, I think that makes sense. Jumping back just a hair to the last case too, though, and this will, we'll dovetail these together, but, we've got a 60-day postponement on the missing middle. I think that's a good opportunity for us, not only to reach out to the neighbors, but also to incorporate some of these other things that were talked about and maybe expand on, the areas and things like that. As Commissioner Levinson likes to say, if you walk like a duck, talk like a duck, you're a duck. But if you're half chicken, half duck, you're a chicken-duck. So, I mean, if we're going to do it, let's do it right. So I guess where I'm going with this is, is there even a way to merge in some of these neighborhood commercial in the missing middle? I mean, just because Opticos didn't look at it, we can do it. I'm just throwing it out there for discussion.
If I may, my red line version that we pulled up on the screen before does incorporate some of this into the missing middle framework.
Director Brooks, would you like to say something?
I just want to clarify that staff did evaluate this as well. We didn't just say, revert back to what the missing middle housing scan did. We did take the time to evaluate it.
Commissioner Higgins.
I agree that this does need more attention because to the applicant's point, if we're dealing with all residential next to all residential, I think that there needs to be some considerations for that. So I think that these are some very good possible amendments. I don't know what it would look like to support them, or if maybe staff could, continue to keep this in the work program and look at it in a little bit more depth, but I think these are really, really good points. So.
Director Brooks, would you like to speak to that? How do we move this along? I mean, I know one way of doing it, but to make sure that your staff has staffed it out.
In terms of adding it to, so you all would like for us to, instead of denying this, you want to put this on our work program to look at? Is that what you're requesting?
I think that seems to be the desire, that say, hey, if we're doing residential to residential, why not make some provision for that?
It is within your purview to ask us to take another look at this.
Okay, do we need to do that by motion or?
Well, you need to act on this particular item.
Okay. Vice Chair Uten.
I think what I would like to do, just because he paid a fee, which is a pretty big dollar amount here, and took the time to enlighten us on some things that we all think might be considered to be a part of this, I would recommend that we postpone this for 60 days to allow him to tag along to what we're doing and get some use out of his fee here, and have him be able to incorporate some comments or feedback and forth as it relates to this specific ordinance amendment that he's got before us. So I would recommend that we postpone it 60 days and ask staff to review it alongside with the other previous agenda item.
Second. If that was a motion.
Okay, we've got a motion to postpone for 60 days. We had a whole series of seconds. Commissioner Huber, I'll give you the second credit here. Seeing no other lights, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. I'll try to get through these. Okay, 24? Is that, okay. On to item 24, staff recommendation. Recommend approval of amendments to section 10.3.b.3, removing requirement that building official certify the utilities are adequate for an ADU. Part of 10.b.7, removing interior side and rear setbacks specific to ADUs. 10.b.8, removing maximum gross floor area requirements based on lot area. Recommend denial of amendments to sections 10.3.a.4, removing the 18-foot height requirement for accessory structures. 10.3.b.2, removing the owner-occupied requirement in TDR land use areas. 10.3.b.4, removing the minimum lot area requirement for an ADU. Part of 10.b.7, allowing ADUs in front and corner side yards. 10.3.b.9, adding a new standard based on primary dwellings smaller than 1,250 square feet. And 10.3.b.11, removing the parking space requirement. And the applicant is before us.
Bentley Marlowe, 322 Douglas Avenue, 37921.
All right.
So this one probably is most appropriately postponed for 60 days. My red line version of the mayor's proposal incorporates carriage houses, which is just Optico's preferred language for an ADU. I borrowed from that proposal into this revision, the TDR area to use certain members of council, and I've borrowed the story measurement height to make a more workable framework for height while being respectful of planning staff's concerns. And I incorporated a lot of revisions that Peter Ahrens in Plans Review wanted for enforcement status. So it's really kind of a missing middle agenda item, so it's probably most appropriate to postpone for 60 days to be seen in the totality.
Commission.
I move we postpone.
Second.
All right, Commissioner Levinson offered a 60-day postponement motion and seconded by Vice Chair Uten. We have one light, Commissioner Shelso. Two lights, Commissioner Higgins. Go ahead, Commissioner Shelso.
So are we suggesting, as part of that, seeing if we want to add ADUs to the missing middle housing plan? I see there's separate parts of the code. And so, I kind of see them more separately.
I also see them fitting, based on the plan that we just looked at, I see them potentially fitting on a broader scale than just the TDR area, or even if that were to be expanded on just, the center city area. So I don't see them, I can see them moving in tandem as a housing strategy. I don't see them needing to move in tandem with the missing middle housing proposal that we just reviewed, particularly when it comes to, if we were to look at removing the owner occupancy requirement as well. So other cities use ADUs as a middle housing strategy to increase. It's not something that Opticos looked at. So no, we haven't really incorporated that into it, but there are some very robust plans that other cities have for ADUs. They have pre-approved plan books, and I think it's something that we should move forward, but I don't see them as much as being tied together. So I'm going to vote against postponing it.
Commissioner Higgins.
I'm not necessarily against postponement, but I do want to make a comment and ask a question about this. So I really think there's a lot of value in the part of this proposal to remove the owner-occupied requirement within this. And I think that I've heard a lot of support of that idea of taking away the owner occupancy requirement. And with that, I would like to ask a question maybe to plans review and inspections, if someone here could speak to it. But, I'm interested in how that is even, a requirement like that is even enforceable long-term. If you build an ADU, maybe at there's two aspects. There's if you've got a vacant lot and you build a house with an ADU, how do you prove that that's your primary residence if there's no house there for you to set that as your address? And then secondly, if you do have build an ADU on your property and you move away and rent out both, then what's to prevent that long term? If you wouldn't care to comment on that, I'd appreciate it.
Director Ahrens.
Good afternoon, Peter Ahrens, Plans Review and Building Inspections Director. We focus our attention on the creation of the ADU is when we validate owner occupancy.
And for that first question, if someone is building an ADU with in tandem with a new house, how do they show their owner occupancy in that new construction?
Our staff will ask the question.
Okay. Simple. And with that, my point, we can't control this long term that it's owner occupied. So I think, if anything, having this requirement up front is just a hindrance to potentially more housing options. I mean, think about even someone could be renting a house and want their parents or a family member, a friend, to be their neighbor. And an ADU would be a perfect scenario for that. If you've got kids and you've got family members that could live there, there's a phrase called a mother-in-law suite that applies to people who don't own the houses too. So I really think that there's a lot of merit to removing that, and I would be in favor of it. So thank you.
All right, Commissioner Biggs.
Just kind of in response to that narrative, I can't speak to how enforcement could practically work. I do know in other cities there is enforcement, namely Nashville. I used to live there and know that you're not allowed to have an ADU that's renter occupied and also have the primary residency renter occupied. So kind of in the spirit of looking at other peer cities, I think that would be interesting to consider how they enforce that and what success or challenges they've had with that, maybe before we kind of agree to do away with that. So that would be, I guess, my request.
Okay. All right. So we've got before us a motion to postpone 60 days. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
We've got one no. Motion carries. Agenda item 25. This will require a motion. Staff recommends denial of amendments as opposed to the City of Knoxville Zoning Code Article 11. As proposed, the elimination of residential parking requirements would apply to all zoning districts throughout the city. Further evaluation and public input would be needed to avoid unintended consequences. All right, and the applicant is Mr. Bentley Marlowe.
Bentley Marlowe, 322 Douglas Avenue, 37921. Well, this is pretty self-explanatory. I think if you talk to many architects, particularly Opticos, the Real Estate Association, many of us builders, land planners all over, we dedicate a ridiculous amount of space to parking. And unless we want to start having issues like the West Coast where they have the van lord phenomenon, where they're using vacant parking spaces to park RVs as housing units, we might want to address this issue to reduce our parking minimums, perhaps turning it on its head to make parking maximums. I really believe that the market will sort this out most efficiently and effectively. I'm not going to build a residential unit that I can't rent. And so I'm taking into consideration what my tenants are driving, how large their cars are, how small their cars are. Some tenants are just going to e-bikes. I've got several now that are taking the approach. I think if Dustin's still here, I think his name was Dustin with Cat, the car light lifestyle, I think he called it. I'm seeing that with some of my tenants across my 32 rentals. So I think it's time that we take a serious look at our parking requirements, especially when we think about how much space that they require. And when we're dealing with small lots of record and trying to build housing on these older lots in the TDR areas of the city, often the space required for a parking minimum requires a variance. In fact, I have a 6-pack of variances. Yeah, almost always have to ask for parking variance, front setback, side setback, rear setback, building coverage, and impervious coverage. One move forward would be addressing this parking stuff, and it keeps coming up over and over again. The missing middle plan we just heard, sometimes some of the larger, broader plans talk about we might need to reduce our parking. I think it's something we ought to be looking at, and this is just sort of a shotgun approach to start the discussion on that. If you guys believe it needs more study, I'll certainly respect your judgment and wisdom on that. If you guys think that you're ready to send this to council, I'm also willing to play ball and respect that judgment. So it's in your hands.
Commission? Commissioner Shelso.
Yeah, I mean, we just had a discussion about the missing middle proposal and parking. We previously had discussed it with ADUs, and I think it's hard to get rid of it all at once in all of these different districts. Like each one really needs to be looked at separately, in my opinion. But I don't deny that this is an important thing that we should look at. Going back to missing, so let's just say we passed this, but then we had passed missing middle today, so would that require parking? How would those two conflict? Or would those two conflict? So I don't think this makes sense right now, but I think it's warranted. Another thing to maybe add to the work program. So I'm going to make a motion to deny per staff recommendation.
We've got a motion to deny by Commissioner Shelso, seconded by Commissioner Adams. Seeing no other lights, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, y'all want to take a break? All right, let's go to agenda item 27. Applicant Blackman Construction, location southeast side of East Emory, northeast side of Thomas Lane, 2.27 acres. Present plan designation zoning is low-density residential, planned residential up to 5 dwelling units per acre, agricultural, planned residential up to 5 dwelling units per acre. Proposed plan designation zoning is medium-density residential, planned residential up to 6 dwelling units per acre, existing land use, single-family residential, agricultural, forestry, vacant land. Density proposed up to 6 dwelling units per acre. This will require 2 motions. First recommendation, deny the sector plan amendment to medium-density residential because it does not meet the location criteria for MDR and is not consistent with development in the area. Second motion, staff recommendation, approve the request to rezone the A-zoned portion of the parcel to PR up to 5 dwelling units per acre to make it consistent with the rest of the parcel because it is consistent with the sector plan and the surrounding area. Is the applicant present?
Yes, sir. Robert Campbell, 7523 Taggart Lane.
Thank you. Do we have any opposition? Seeing no opposition, you may proceed.
Thank you, sir. And first of all, before I get started, Mafioso's on 12th Avenue is a tremendous place to have a pizza at. So just want to, you made me hungry a minute ago. But this is a situation where the larger parcel was zoned at 5 units an acre. We've got already 9 townhomes are approved. And so that was the owner then bought this smaller parcel. And again, going to 5 units an acre seemed to be all right. But what that did is it put us in between a unit. We have 3 triplexes already on the plan, and we want to do another triplex. So that brings us to 11.4. And while I certainly very much appreciate what staff is trying to do with MDR, just as you have the opportunity to tell me, no way, this is stupid, you have the next person that comes in that wants to do MDR, no way, this is stupid as well. I believe my case has got some merit because this corridor is changing rapidly. It is on Emory Road between Halls and Gibbs. Halls and Gibbs are growing astronomically. There's actually a T-dot widening plan from Halls to Gibbs to either make Emory Road a 3-lane or a 5-lane. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's going to happen tomorrow, but it has been put out to design. So this corridor at some point in time will be an MDR corridor. There are other parcels along this corridor that are zoned a little bit differently. But all I'm trying to do is try to get that 0.6 of a unit so I can have the consistency of the development instead of having this 1 unit sitting off by itself. And that's why I'm there. I appreciate what staff's trying to do and normally don't try to buck what they're saying, but in this case, it certainly makes, it just makes sense to me to be able to have that consistency on the development. So I'll shut up.
Commission. Vice Chair Uten.
I think I respect Mr. Campbell a lot. I've seen him quite a bit in the past, and if this piece of property was closer to Gibbs at Harperson Crossroads or back towards Maynardville Highway, I would be the first one to shake your hand and say, yeah, you've got a great argument. This particular case, it's not MDR right in the middle of all of that stretch of East Emory today, I think is just a little premature. And I think that a 5 DU per the acre townhouse development is right in the sweet spot with everything else around it. And I think staff got this one right. So I'd love to tell you, yes, great argument. I like your pizza joint too, but I'm gonna make a motion that we deny the sector plan amendment to MDR because it doesn't meet the location criteria.
Second.
We've got a motion to deny by Vice Chair Uten, seconded by Commissioner Huber. Seeing no other lights, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
And
Thank
then
you all for your consideration.
I'm gonna make a motion that we approve the request to rezone the A portion of the parcel up to 5 per the acre to make it consistent with the rest of the parcel.
We've got a motion to approve per staff recommendation by Vice Chair Uten, seconded by Commissioner Huber. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you. Yep. All right. Item number 28, Applicant Miles Morrison, location south side of Cabbage Drive at the western Dove Wing Lane terminus. Approximate size of tract, 10.51 acres. Present zoning, plan residential, 3 dwelling units per acre. Zoning requested, agricultural, existing land use, agricultural, forestry, and vacant land. Staff recommendation, approve the agricultural zone because it is consistent with the sector plan and surrounding development. Is the applicant present?
It's me. Miles Morrison, 7710 Hoff Lane, Knoxville, 37938.
Thank you. Would you like to make any comments?
Yeah, just my wife and I were wanting to have a homestead, and we own the 6 acres directly to the west of it, so we're just bringing them together in agricultural.
Commission?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if there's no opposition, I'd like to make a motion, we approve the agricultural zone because it's
Let me just
consistent.
confirm that there's no opposition. I don't think there is, but I'll ask for it. Do we have any? No, I don't see any. Okay, go ahead, Vice Chair.
I think I was there.
Okay, your motion is to approve per staff recommendation. Did we get a second? Second by Commissioner Shelso. Seeing no other lights, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Item number 30, applicant Jason Barnes, location north side of Old Middlebrook Pike, south side of Middlebrook Pike, west of North Gallagher View Road.
For the applicant, Attorney Matt Barocas, not registered to speak. I'm not sure if I need to sign in order to speak on behalf of the applicant or not. Doesn't look like I need to, but Mr. Barnes.
Let me read through the report here, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. Let's see. Approximate size of tract, 1.95 acres. Present zoning agricultural. Zoning requested plan residential. Existing land use, single-family residential. Density proposed, 9 dwelling units per acre. This will require one motion. Staff recommendation is to approve the planned residential zone up to 9 dwelling units per acre because it's consistent with the sector plan and surrounding development.
And that is all correct, and unless there are any
All right.
questions, I
If
can
you'll
answer.
state your name and address.
Matt Barocas, 122 South Gay Street, Unit A, Knoxville, 37902. And I'm an attorney for the applicant,
All right.
Jason Barnes. He couldn't be here
Thank you. Thank you.
tonight.
Do we have any opposition? Seeing no opposition, you may proceed.
Thank you. We would just ask that the application be approved.
Okay, all right. Commission?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve per staff recommendation.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion by Vice Chair Uten to approve per staff recommendation, seconded by Commissioner Higgins. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you all.
31, item 31, applicant Brian Frederick, location south side of Westland Drive, east of Gothic Manor Lane, approximate size of tract, 2.14 acres, present zoning, agricultural, planned residential up to 5 dwelling units per acre. Zoning requested is low-density residential, existing land use, rural residential, and density proposed 4 dwelling units per acre. The staff recommendation, approve the low-density residential zone because it is consistent with the sector plan and consistent with the surrounding development. Is the applicant present? All right. Any opposition? Commission?
Move to approve per staff recommendation.
Second.
We've got a motion to approve per staff recommendation by Commissioner Shelso, seconded by Vice Chair Uten. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Okay. All right. Item 33. Applicant Taylor Forrester, location west of Valley Grove Lane, south of Ball Camp Pike, 12.09 acres. Present zoning's agricultural. Zoning requested, planned residential. Existing land use, agricultural, forestry, vacant land. Density proposed up to 2.5 dwelling units per acre. Staff recommendation, approve the planned residential zone up to 2.5 dwelling units per acre because it is consistent with the sector plan and surrounding development. Is the applicant available?
Present.
All right. Any opposition? Seeing no opposition, you may proceed, Counselor.
Taylor Forrester, 1111 North Shore Drive, Knoxville, Tennessee, Suite S700. was kind of thrown off because I thought there was opposition. Is why I got pulled off consent. But this is a request for a rezoning to plan residential with a density of up to 2.5 dwelling units per acre. We've met with staff, met with the codes department and discussed this. Simply ask that you follow staff's recommendation and approve recommendation for the rezoning to plan residential at a density of up to 2.5 dwelling units per acre. Satisfies all the requirements needed for a rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Commission?
Move we approve PR planned residential zone up to 2.5 per staff recommendation.
Second.
All right, we've got a move to approve per staff recommendation by Vice Chair Uten, seconded by Commissioner Levinson. We have Commissioner Adams.
I just wondered why it was pulled off of consent.
We had someone pull it off and they're not here to speak. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 37. Oh, excuse me, 35. 35, Holston Springs LLC, location west side of McCubbins Road, north side of Wooddale Church Road, 5 acres. Present plan designation and zoning is low-density residential, hillside protection, plan residential for 5 dwelling units per acre. Proposed plan designation and zoning, rural residential, hillside protection, open space, existing land use, agricultural, forestry, vacant land. This will require 2 motions. Staff recommendation is to approve the sector plan amendment to rural residential because it is consistent with the development in the area. The HP land use would remain intact. Motion 2, staff recommendation, approve the open space zone for the portion of the subject property illustrated in the zoning boundary map in the application, subject to the below 1 condition. Is the applicant present?
Hi, Bobby Bramhall, Holston Springs LLC, 733 McCubbins Road, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37924. I am here for the motion and would like to request your approval today. I do think we have opposition though, and I think would like to let them speak if that's okay first.
All right. Do we have opposition?
Irene Wood and Jerry Wood, 536 Coram Road, Knoxville, 37924, where the adjacent property on the west border of the property that's in question. If we could pull that up, and if we could also pull up the satellite view of that as well. If we can zoom in, please. I think there was a satellite view further up.
Hmm? What are we doing?
We are the property to the northwest of that entire boundary. And if there wasn't that grid, the yellow grid there, you would see that there's canvas camping on Mr. Bramwell's property on the western?
East of our property, west is.
Yeah. So it's the western portion of the property by which he's looking to have rezoned has 3 canvas on stilts tents We were here last time. We don't have any objection to him having his commercial businesses, his rural retreats, his places where he has people stay overnight, and there's other buildings on there. We only had an issue with the canvas tents being within the 200-foot offset, which was there to protect us if it was a rural retreat. Now apparently there is another application to have it changed from the rural retreat to open spaces, which would allow campgrounds. So our concerns are the same. These are canvas tents, which are allowed indoor propane tanks for heating, and it also has campsites with open fires that are within 20 feet of our property. So we're pretty familiar with this process, and if you have already made up your minds that you're going to grant this zoning so that he can sort of skirt the 200 feet protection that we did have to now having virtually no protection from their campsites, and that their condition is that he erect a fence on the western portion of that property, which borders our property and which is all densely forest. Since this commercial enterprise, Mr. Bramwell's enterprise, has been running for 3 years without any approval from zoning and is now coming to you to ask for this, if this is going to be your approval for now from agricultural to rural retreat to open spaces allowing for open campgrounds, we are going to ask you that you kindly decide what type of fencing would be provided for our protection, any sort of oversight, and any sort of deadline to have this fencing completed. Again, he has been running this commercial business, he doesn't live there, for 3 years without applying for any sort of zoning, and we're asking for protection for our property.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to respond to a couple of the comments that were made. One being the offset for the rural retreat is 200 feet. For an open space, I believe it's 20 feet. We're 32 feet from the boundary. It is a dense 10-acre forest. You can't see it. They actually didn't know about us until we actually went to them respectfully to request a waiver several months ago. So that's why this process is happening this way. The other thing is it's a dense forest, so you don't really need a fence if you have a forest. I mean, that's a fence. It's a huge barrier with slopes, and I couldn't even walk through there without being covered in poison ivy. So that's the one thing I would say. The other thing is the reason we were operating is because we thought lodging was permitted in the area. I do have Airbnbs on the property, so it wasn't to be a campground. These are permanent structures. They're not transient tents. So with staff recommendation and the help of the Knox County staff, we've been told that this really should be classified as open space, and that's the best way to use this property. So it wasn't out of, I guess, blatant disregard of this commission. It was just we thought it was lodging, which was something I have run for several years in the property with Airbnb. So that's a response to that. Of course, we are within the open space, preservation zone, recreational use. Everything that I've read on the Tennessee website says that this is a great use of the land and for preservation and public enjoyment and all the good things that we like the outside to be. So that's my only response. I'm happy to take any questions.
Commissioner Shelso.
So for staff or maybe for codes, engineering, so we rezoned this, or we granted a special use for rural retreat previously, correct? And that's why there's a 200-foot minimum buffer for a lodging.
Correct. So the couple months ago, I can't remember, but there was a rural retreat approved on the site. There's actually another one this month. The rural retreat does allow lodging, but the lodging has to be outside of the buffers. If you're not outside the buffers, you need the waivers and so on. So, I mean, there is a rural retreat approval though.
Within open space, camping is defined as what? Exactly.
There's nothing in the county ordinance that explicitly says camping, but there's a use in open space that allows camps and resorts, and that's the closest that we really can get to
Resorts
campgrounds.
too, huh? So, yeah, I guess, I mean, what I kind of see here is, an applicant that was trying to become properly zoned and get his lodgings, which are, as he said, is basically a permanent tent or a type of structure within compliance, and then a neighbor doesn't want to sign the waiver, and this seems to kind of be like a workaround for it. And so I guess in terms of, it doesn't make me fully comfortable voting for it, knowing that neighbor is not approving something that if they would approve, they would be fine, it seems to me. Right?
So I guess I would just. So trying to think of how to approach this. They already have Airbnbs on the site, right? So like an Airbnb, anybody can rent out a house right now in the county as an Airbnb unless they change their rules, but it doesn't have to be tied to a rural retreat. Now, if you have something that's more than just a house, then or something that's different, like a tent, like the glamping, that's not a house. That's not a permitted residential structure, so you can't use that same rules. You still got to come in compliance with the zoning. So if they didn't have the rural retreat component, which is now approved anyways outside of this, they could have come through and asked for a campground or OS. Is the camping use going to be appropriate in this location? They will have to come back through use or development plan approval through the planning commission before the campground can be approved. So I wouldn't necessarily, I wouldn't encourage you to think about it as them trying to skirt the rules. It's just think of it as two separate uses altogether. They are two separate uses. You have a rural retreat, that's one thing, and then you have a campground, that's another.
Let's see, any other? Commissioner Shelso?
I'll make a motion we approve per staff's recommendation.
We've got a motion to approve per staff recommendation. We have a second.
If I can get a clarification on the fence that they've asked for, then I would second that motion. Did you want to include the fence type as they requested?
I'll include that, yes.
There we go. What kind of fence is better than, I mean, I'm telling you, you can't walk through this forest. So that's the only thing. In response to Mr. Shelso, it's not to skirt the rules. It's just the best use of the property. And if you want to come visit sometime, it's just very naturey. Everybody's hanging out. It's very, very calm. So not trying to violate anybody's privacy in any way.
Okay, so the staff recommendation says to install a fence in 60 days. Is staff comfortable with the type of fence that we're expecting to see?
I would leave that to your guys' discretion as to if you want it to be something more like a split rail fence that may be more easier to install given the rustic nature of the terrain, or if you guys wanted it to be something a little bit more robust.
Commissioner Uden?
And that is also something that can be determined during development plan review, because they will have to come back through for
Do we
the,
want to leave it
for
to
the
the
site plan.
discretion of the staff?
Mm-hmm.
That's up to you all.
We may want to leave it, one option is leave it to the discretion of the staff.
I'm fine with that.
I'm curious what the intention of the fence is, because a split rail fence doesn't offer privacy or really
A split
protect
rail
from.
accomplishes providing, here is where you are leaving one area and going into another, which I don't know if that's what the opposition's desire is. A split rail is obviously not going to obscure, to the applicant's point, the forest obscures, but there may be something else that the fence is supposed to be doing. So I was going to ask.
I'm seeing the nod of the head that I think that's their desire, is just to define the boundary. Is that right?
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to respect based on their previous comments that they made during the rural retreat, to demarc the property to prevent guests from traversing onto their site.
Because it's all one wooded area, so if a camper were to want to go walk in the woods while they camp, they would run into the fence. That makes sense.
Sure.
The nice thing about a split rail as well is that it means that the wildlife can do what it wants, because, not blocking it.
So Vice Chair Uten, was that a second or no?
Yes.
Okay, it was a second. All right. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Chair will entertain another motion.
Make a motion, we approve, the OS open space zone for the portion of the subject property illustrated in the zoning boundary map in the application subject to the one condition.
Second.
Got a motion from Commissioner Higgins, seconded by Vice Chair Uten. Seeing no other lights, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We've got two other cases. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Vice Chair Uten, and I must leave.
And the fun begins. All right, we're on to agenda item number 37. It'll be a subdivision concept development plan, CMH Homes, Inc. on Tempton Station Road. Applicant developer is CMH Homes, Inc. The location is south side of Tipton Station Road, east of Poplar Wood Trail. The approximate acreage is 20.21. The zoning is planned residential. Existing land use is single-family residential, agricultural, forestry, and vacant land. The proposed use is detached residential subdivision. The number of lots is 71. No variances would be required. A couple of alternative design standards. This would take 3 motions. Motion number 1 would be to approve the alternate design standards based on the justification provided by the applicant and the recommendations of Knox County Engineering Public Works. Motion number 2 would be to approve the concept set plans subject to the 9 conditions that are outlined in staff report. And motion number 3 would be the approve the development plan for the residential subdivision up to 71 detached houses on the individual lots and reduction of the peripheral setback on lot 1 from 35 to 25 feet along the eastern property boundary, subject to 2 conditions. Is the applicant present?
We are. Ben Mullins, 550 West Main Street, here for CMH Homes.
All right. Is there any opposition? Seeing none, Counselor, you're up.
Thank you. Been a long day. I'll be pretty straightforward and brief on this. We appreciate all the work that staff's done on this. We've worked with them to make some revisions to this plan at the last minute to eliminate the variances and minimize the variations that we would need from the standards. We are in agreement with staff's recommendation, including the landscaping screening along the southern border to screen those lots from the larger, more agricultural lots that are there to the south. We would ask that you would approve this per staff's recommendation. Be happy to answer any questions. We also have David Harbin, who designed this, and Doug Carnathan with CMH if there are other questions. Thank you.
Great. Have any comments, Commissioner Adams?
I've just got a question. And I'm I think that this development makes a lot of sense. This is for you, Mr. Mullins, because of its position with the schools, et cetera. But when we left our last time together talking about this particular case, there was a commitment to meet and talk with the community more because that seemed to have been absent. What was done?
We have, the last meeting was that the zoning that was here. We had a large community meeting with the South Knox Community Association, and there was a large meeting with that. And a lot of the comments that were generated, we talked about, were following that meeting. At the zoning meeting, there were Ms. Hooper, Mr. Proctor, and I can't remember I think Harper, the three neighbors to the south that came up and said, hey, you really haven't reached out to us directly. We're the ones that access the property through the easement. And you would think you would talk to us too. And we said, we'll be happy to speak with you guys and talk to you all further. And we've had a lot of engagement with them to the point where those neighbors did not oppose the rezoning at the density that we requested. And actually one of them talked about the need for additional infrastructure out there, but was in support of the density that we were requesting. We've had several meetings with those individuals. We did not have another overall large meeting. We talked to, and I read Mr. Thompson's comment on it. Actually, he and I spoke before he submitted the comment. He told me he was going to submit it. We asked if we should come to the September Community Association meeting again. We talked to Commissioner Carson Daly about that, and he said he didn't think that there was a need, that the neighbors to the south were the ones that were primarily affected by this. As long as we were continuing to work with them, he was satisfied with that. So we didn't go to that September meeting because there wasn't any perceived need for it. And as I understand it, this didn't even come up during that meeting. So we did engage with those neighbors that said we hadn't in the past, and I think they are supportive of it with the landscaping screening that we've proposed or that has been conditioned.
I appreciate you lining out for all those neighbors that weren't contacted and weren't part of that kind of trio, so they now hear from you as to what dialogue did take place, and if you were advised that it wasn't necessary for you to go to that.
We talked about whether we needed to go to the September meeting, and
the council daily.
We were told no, we don't. We don't think so, because the Commissioner Daly knew we were talking to Mr. Proctor, Ms. Hooper, Mr. and Mrs. Dr. and Mrs. May, and Mr. I think it's Harper. His name is the one that I have trouble. But yeah, we had a meeting actually in Mr. May's office with all of them, and they had counsel at that meeting. So yes.
Great. Commissioner Higgins.
Thank you. I brought this up at our meeting on Tuesday, but I noticed that there are no sidewalks apart from directly on the main road there. Well, no, there's existing sidewalks and then there's a sidewalk included in the corner connecting to the school. I understand that this does not, may not meet a threshold, but I'd like to, my biggest concern here is this is going to be, I think this would be very appealing for families with students going to the high school, and I think getting to those sidewalks to get to the high school poses some safety risks in terms of having to walk on the streets, especially if you've got high school drivers as well, young drivers who tend to be a little bit faster and less aware of their surroundings. So I would really like to see some sidewalks here, and I'd like to ask engineering if there's any way to, if y'all think that it might be more appropriate to have a little bit more pedestrian route on here.
Yes, we discussed this internally with our staff, and we debated it back and forth. And after the agenda review the other day, me and Jim discussed, and we would be open, if you want to include it as a condition, Knox County would accept those sidewalks along Road A and potentially part of Road B there to make that loop, and we would accept those and maintain them.
Okay, great. With that, I'd like to make a motion to approve per staff's recommendation.
Whoa. We've got three motions here. One you have to, the motion number one would be the alternate design standards. So you take care of that one first.
All right, motion to approve the alternate design standards per staff's recommendation.
Have a second? Motion by Commissioner Higgins, second by Commissioner Shelto. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Motion number two is the concept plan where you could add that condition.
And Commissioner Uden, can I just address the sidewalks as on that? Because I know that's a condition that wasn't on that and was added. I know it came up at the agenda review, and I did talk to my clients about it. And I respect where you're coming from with the need of sidewalks. I think my client would prefer that not be a condition. The reasons for that, I mean, we're looking at really trying to hit a specific price point for these lots at sub 350,000, try to keep them affordable. And the sidewalks are an additional expense to that may push that price point up. I would say, I live in an older neighborhood without sidewalks, Level Hills, it's got, wide streets, and, we walk on the side of the street, and there's not an issue with that. The streets here are 26 feet in width and have a 50-foot right-of-way. That's wider than Tipton Station, the road that accesses it. So I think that, there is an opportunity for safe pedestrian access, respectfully on that. And we really would not want that condition on there, but understand.
Commissioner Higgins, on Tuesday, did you talk about going from Tipton Station just on the main road to the intersection?
Really anywhere, but I think that the sidewalks that would be applicable would just be on, or that engineering mentioned would just be on A and then part of B. And so I think that would be probably connecting the kind of the center area of the neighborhood up to Tipton Station, and then probably trying to get a little bit of a direction over to that cul-de-sac where the where the sidewalk to the school is. So, that doesn't really completely satisfy my concern, because I think that even residents of affordable housing should be protected as well. But I think that that's a good start. So,
Highway Department, did you understand that? I remember a little bit of this conversation on Tuesday, and I remember you bringing up just the main road as it came to the intersection. I don't remember any conversations past that. Did you and your staff talk about that anymore?
Yes, we would be okay with just Road A. There is a stub out. There's 72 units now, so you wouldn't need but like 28 more to trip that 1,000 ADT. So, and then they would be warranted by the ordinance. So Road A would be fine with us.
And would that, if there were more units coming in from that stub out, would sidewalks need to be built on these roads?
It would only be streets where the daily trips would exceed 1,000. So I think the only street that would potentially trip that would be the Road A, the main road in.
Okay.
I don't believe there's enough property at the rear that you would get many more units to trip it on the other roads.
Gotcha. Well, I think that Road B, which is the one that, the main road comes in, and then Road B kind of connects it to the east there where that other sidewalk is. I think it's not out of the question or, too much to ask to include a small sidewalk there. It's a handful of lots and really not a very long route. And I can't imagine that having a large impact on the affordability of the units. But I do think that if those are the two directions where pedestrians will be going, getting to that sidewalk would be, a pretty good, having something where people could land and then get to the main sidewalks on the corners, I think would be pretty good. So I would still include in my motion to a condition to put a sidewalk on Road A and then a sidewalk on Road B connecting over to Road D.
Okay, let me ask Director Brooks about this real quick. So as I understand, we can ask an applicant to do sidewalks, but we can't require that. And we ask about a participation with the highway department because they have a sidewalk ordinance that does not require them to maintain those sidewalks, and they are trying to participate on a road or a section of sidewalk if the applicant agrees to it. So you can ask, but I don't think there's a tell. Director Brooks?
Yes, that is correct, Vice Chair Uden.
So it can't be included as a condition?
Not unless the applicant is willing to do so, and the highway department would have to concur on this amount of sidewalk. Director Snowden, I see you wanting to talk.
Yeah, I tend to agree. We were under the impression that the applicant would be willing to install the sidewalks, but because they originally showed on the plan, but if now that they are, in somewhat opposition to that, the ordinance is clear that, we can't enforce that condition. So I think it would be very problematic to add that as a condition from the Planning Commission.
Correct.
All right. I guess the question for the applicant is, would you all be interested in a sidewalk on Road A?
I'd have to consult with my client, obviously, on that. I know that, we did go through several different versions of this, trying to get to the plan that made the most sense for this property and for what we were trying to accomplish. And as part of that we ended up taking the sidewalks off.
All right. I do not have a motion then.
All right, so I would be seeking a motion for the concept plan. Commissioner Huber.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve the concept plan subject to the 9 conditions listed.
Have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Browning seconds to approve the concept plan subject to the 9 conditions. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. And now motion number 3 would be the development plan.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the development plan for a residential subdivision with up to 71 detached houses on individual lots and a reduction of the peripheral setback on Lot 1 from 35 feet to 25 feet along the eastern property boundaries, subject to 2 conditions.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Huber, second by Commissioner Browning. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it.
Thank you all very much.
Our final agenda item today is item number 44. The file number is 10SA23F, subdivision in Isabel Estates Phase 1. Applicant developer Ryan Lynch with Lynch Surveys, land surveyor. Location is northwest of East Emory Road, northeast of Brackett Road. Approximate acreage is 30.04. Number of lots is 80. Zoning is PR, planned residential zone up to 3 per the acre. Staff recommendation is to postpone this request for 30 days to the November 9th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting to give the applicant more time to come up into substantial compliance with the originally approved concept plan.
Yeah, Scott Davis, P.O. Box 11315, Knoxville 37939. I appreciate y'all's time. The original concept plan was approved by you all for 90 lots. There's a traffic impact study that was done that recommended a turn lane on Emory Road if they could approve up to 66 lots based on the traffic impact study before a potential turn lane was recommended on Emory Road, of which the state, I think, is in the process of acquiring right-of-way to do. And they've come up with how they figure traffic impact studies recently, and with the new traffic analysis, it can now go to 80 before a turn lane is recommended on Emory Road. That was submitted to staff and to engineering. And so we're respectfully requesting to allow us to go to 80 lots on our plat as opposed to the 66 because of the new traffic impact analysis that was done. In addition, as you all are much well aware, 3 months ago, this would not be coming before you all. There was a quirk in state law whereby staff was administratively able to approve plats. Right now, with lots 25 and more, it has to come back before you all. So all I'm asking today is that you all approve the plat for 80 lots. We still have to jump through all the hoops with engineering. We still have to jump through all the hoops with Knox County Planning before they'll sign the plat. If we cannot meet all that criterion, they won't sign the plat and we can't record. So all I'm doing today is respectfully asking you all to allow us to plat 80 lots, which the traffic impact analysis supports. We still have to go to engineering. They still have to analyze everything. They will not sign the plat until and unless we meet all of their criteria. So that's my request today is we approve the plat for 80 lots and allow me to continue to work with staff. And in the staff report, if you look in the comments of the staff report, it says this could be approved administratively by planning staff. This allows me to go to that next step with planning staff. Your all's next meeting is 35 days away. We have asphalt down. It costs me $1,035 a day in interest. That's almost $40,000 it's going to cost me to wait until the next meeting to get this approved. If you all approve it today, we still go through the planning staff. They still have authority not to sign the plat. Engineering still has authority not to sign the plat. This just allows me to move forward.
Thank you. Can I get someone from staff to comment on where we are? It looks to me like there were a couple things that needed to be done that he's addressing, but I'd just like to hear from staff. And then also, am I remembering wrong, or if you have a final plat, I thought you had to go up or down. I didn't think you could postpone a final plat. Or am I not thinking that?
Yeah, we did look into this. If it's not in substantial compliance, there is a provision where you can
postpone.
You can postpone.
Okay.
But if it's related to the traffic study, I would defer to Knox County Engineering. Is that your question, Vice Chair Uden, or in general?
It says that it's not in substantial compliance, so I'm trying to figure out what that means.
Okay. Mr. Reynolds, can you speak to that?
I'll just start with the traffic study. The staff has not had an opportunity to approve the revised traffic study yet, and we're waiting to hear back from TDOT as well. I can't speak to that part of it. The rest of it, so we have a couple other elements we need to discuss. They have the stub out to the east. So basically what we're seeing is a plat with 80 lots. There are the hatched areas that do show dashed lot lines where future lots would be. They're called future development. I think part of that concern is they're not meeting all the conditions of previous approval by showing stub out to the east and also labeling a part of the property as future development that was really more like a common area. Those are like little nuance items, I'd say, but still a bit concerning.
So let me ask you this, Mike. If County Engineering and Public Works feels comfortable with the traffic impact study, is that something where you would get that from them prior to signing the plat as he's suggesting, or are there other
Like I
things?
said, I might have to lean on maybe Michelle, if you have more context on this. I don't deal with the approval part of plats too often, and if something comes to the planning commission, you approve that plat. Is it ready to certify that moment? That's where I'm not too familiar with. Do we have that wiggle room to further refine a plat after the fact from the planning, once it gets through the planning commission?
Yeah, I guess it's a little bit tricky. So I guess if this body made a motion that it was approvable contingent on engineering's approval of the traffic study, that would be one thing. We would also need to make it contingent upon the other more nuanced housekeeping issues, like the label of future development on the
property that's on the top, like plan right, it's labeled future development, whereas in the past plan, the approved concept plan, it's open space. And so one of our concerns was that, with it being labeled this way and approved this way as a final plat, that could potentially be sold and developed as lots in the future, which would then overtake the density that they're allowed to have. So that was a concern that we had. And then also the step out, as Mike was saying, that middle prong on the plan right side does not extend all the way to the property line. That's based on a fall zone. You can see the circle dashed area of a telecommunications tower. And so we did reach out to our consultant. They confirmed that a right-of-way is permissible within that area. So that common area that's dashed there isn't necessarily strictly needed. So we would want to see that stub out continue through that little common area to attach to that adjacent property. It's another large property that's well over, I don't know how many acres it is, but it's very large. So the stub out would provide some additional connectivity because that connects up to another classified road, but it could provide some connectivity in the area. So that was basically our concern. So you could probably condition all of it today, but that's why we were recommending postponement, is to kind of work that out so that we could have a plan that was approvable as is before this body, before it came through for certification, just so that everything was more clear.
I have absolutely no problem meeting and making it contingent upon meeting all engineering and public works requirements as well as meeting all MP staff requirements. I have no problem with that at all. And so they will not sign the plat until and unless I meet all of their requirements. We can't record without their signature, and we cannot record without MPG staff signature. So they still have control. So I have no problem making it contingent upon those items.
Before I go to our commissioners, Engineering and Public Works, looks like they have a comment.
The question we would have is, this plat is 80 lots. If TDOT comes back and says he can only plat 64, could then we approve a plat with only 64 lots on it and sign it, or would it have to come back before this body?
I'm assuming based on what the applicant just articulated is that if you all would not approve the plat as it's submitted, that you couldn't sign it and he'd have to go back and get a revised plat, is what it sounds to me like.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. Commissioner Higgins, were you first? I
believe so. I think maybe just one question for Mike. He had mentioned that, or the applicant had mentioned that previously this could have been staff approved before the state's change. If this had have come before you all and it were able to be staff approved with these changes, would you have approved it, or would you have sent it back to make those changes? To us?
Yeah, previously, this would have been a discussion with staff to get the plat into compliance with substantial compliance with the concept plan approval. It wouldn't have to come to the planning commission for formal approval.
I'll piggyback on that. I think one of the reason that we're recommending postponement is because we didn't find it was in substantial compliance based on those things. So if that were still the case, we would have had to bring it to you anyway. Because of that, we wouldn't have been able to sign it administratively, even if it would have been 25 plus, because we wouldn't have been finding that it was in substantial compliance, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and in that scenario, you would have had to bring it to us if they wanted to proceed with it not in substantial compliance. If they had have said, okay, we'll change it, would you have been able to still approve?
We wouldn't have been able to approve it. They would probably try to ask for variances from some of those things, which would have triggered the need to come to you all.
Gotcha. So if are we able to approve this today with the condition that it's brought to compliance in order to proceed?
I think there's the question of the previously approved concept plan. So if you guys wanted to approve it based on the reasons that are not in compliance, to make conditions to bring it into compliance with that, then you would be able to do that. If you wanted to approve it as is, then a revised concept plan would be needed, and that's the part that could be approved administratively by staff.
So if we approved it as is, they would need to redo the concept plan? And I assume that would probably slow them down even more than a 30-day postponement?
Not necessarily because it's administrative, so it wouldn't have to come to you guys, but we would need a revised plan showing, whatever you guys approved here that's not in compliance with what was approved before.
And I apologize because the term substantial compliance is a little bit conflicting. I mean, the original concept plan was approved for 90 lots. The roads haven't changed at all. The road profiles haven't changed. The size of the lots hadn't changed. Nothing has changed. The only thing that has changed is the threshold by which we can plat 66 lots or plat 80 lots. The concept plan that was approved was 90 lots. There's only one variable that's changed through this process is the change in how they analyze traffic now, and that has been amended.
One quick question. Are you aware of the 3 or 4 comments that staff has written, though, that on the concept plan that you're speaking of, there were some stub roads and some things that were?
Yes, sir. And yes, and we're agreeable
You're
with that.
okay?
We're okay with that. We can go back to staff and work.
So
Part
you
of
would
this-
modify the final plat to include these 3 items that staff has pointed out that are different than the originally approved concept plan in order to get the 80 approved if TDOT agrees with the traffic study?
That's correct, yes, sir.
Okay. Commissioner Adams? No? Commissioner Huber? Oh,
I'll go first.
all right.
So the term final plat, how can we approve a plat as a final plat if we're not looking at the final plat? Like, can it really be a conditional approval of something that's actually not final? Like, wouldn't the state code be, the reason they want us to look at it is it is the final version that will be recorded, right? Otherwise, we're really just talking about it, I mean, and I know this isn't a concept plan submission, but we're just playing concept plan revision right now and hoping that it can be administratively signed off on, right? Like that's where and then it's not just one thing here. We've got like 3 or 4. So, I know time is money, but this is, the future development labeling is also a little concerning. So, I mean, I think we should just postpone it instead of try and dance around how we can make this work and see it next month. So, pending confirmation maybe from council on this, I'd make the motion to postpone per staff recommendation.
Go ahead, Tasha.
I do have some concerns, Commissioner Shelso, as council. The bylaws of the Planning Commission say, with regard to, it's in section 10 concerning postponement, that any matter appearing on the commission's agenda can be postponed to a subsequent meeting upon a majority vote of the commission. But there's a carve out there, provided, however, any application for final subdivision plat approval may not be postponed without the concurrence and consent of the applicant. So the applicant can certainly consent to a postponement, but my concern is that if the applicant does not consent to it, that is not, that at this point, the commission's option without consent of postponement is you vote it up or you vote it down.
And my other part of the concern is it a final, we're not really approving a final plat?
I think that's the origin of that rule. I mean, I think that's that's right.
As you all probably aware, plats are changed and amended many times after the.
Excuse me, at this point, I'm going to have to ask that we limit the applicant's comments.
Yes, ma'am.
We're at the point now for commission discussion. So if you don't mind, feel free to take a seat where you'd be more comfortable. And if there's a question that's asked to you directly by a commissioner, then of course, we'd ask you to come back up. But right now, it's appropriate for commission discussion.
Yes, ma'am, my
Thank you.
apologies.
No, it's fine.
Yep, my apologies.
And part of my concern is if we approve this with these conditions, like could a neighbor who doesn't like this file a suit and say, well, the planning commission never actually approved the final plat? Like it's partially out of the concern about the legitimacy of the plat.
I think that's right. I think you want finality because it's called final. That's right.
And so that's why would, I guess, implore the consent to postpone.
Commissioner Adams.
Just to make sure I'm tracking, we have the option of the applicant accepting the recommendation of postponement, or we have to vote up or down on what is in front of us today.
That's what I thought originally, yes.
That is my interpretation of the bylaws, yes.
Okay, so I would second Commissioner Scelso's move to postpone with the consent of the applicant.
Then in that case, it would be appropriate at this point. Now it is your turn to speak, Mr. Applicant. There is a motion and a second to postpone. Is that a postponement for 30 days? Is that the motion that you've made? Okay, so there's a postponement for 30 days or to the next meeting of this body. We will need to know before the commission votes if you agree to that or you do not.
Well, for clarification purposes, and I apologize, I wasn't trying to be rude and I wasn't trying to speak out of hand earlier. We have millions of dollars invested here, and so.
And I understand all that, but at this
Okay,
point.
I'll answer your question.
I really just need a yes or no, and then I can instruct the board appropriately.
No, ma'am, I have a question and I need clarification.
Okay.
If it is denied, let's just say it goes to the vote to deny the plat, what are the steps beyond that? When can you come back and reapply?
You would have to
What
come
is
back
the
and-
steps? I'm sorry?
You would need to reapply, that's correct.
Well, in some issues, you have to wait a year. Do you have to wait a year? Do you have to wait 30 days? When can you reapply for a plat?
I believe that you could resubmit a plat.
But do you have to do it 45 days before the meeting? So this wouldn't be heard until December?
That's correct.
And what, I mean,
So I'm sorry.
and in all due respect to this body, I'm still not understanding, and I know you told me I have to give you a yes or no answer, but it's hard to do so without knowing and understanding what your rules are, because there
Sure,
seems
I
to be
understand.
some ambiguity in the rules.
Well, it sounds like, and we're going to close this and go to a vote, but it sounds like if you do not want to postpone it 30 days, that would ensure that you would get back on the agenda in November. If you're going to change everything that you said staff asked for you to, apparently it's going to be approved in November with TDOT and Highway Department's approval. You'd be approved in November, it sounds like, if it's staff recommendation, if we vote on it.
And we're going to check that timing just to make sure, yes.
And if not,
Because I do want you to have a clear understanding of the timing.
right, if not, then it sounds like we have a motion that we need to deal with.
Commissioner, while the applicant's doing that, I just want to clarify for myself. I know you just said it, but I was debating something else. If it is postponed, that would be a 30-day postponement. So that would mean November.
That would mean November, and if he is going to accept the staff comments that he was going to make the final plat mirror what was approved on the original concept plan, and if the traffic study is okay to the satisfaction of the Highway Department and TDOT, then I would assume that staff would come back in November with a positive recommendation because it meets the merits of the approved concept plan, and we could approve or deal with it at that time.
But if it goes to a vote for up or down on the plat, and he chooses to, and it is denied, and he reapplies, then the time period for that would be?
It's not 1 year, so I'll read from the bylaws. So if the commission votes to deny any application for rezoning, use on review, special use, or 1 year plan amendment, a new application for the same proposal shall not be accepted by the staff for a period of 1 year. So that does not include final plats.
But does it mean the 45-day or the December?
Right, yes, in the standard, yes.
So what would the deadline be, staff, at this point?
I don't know the deadline off the top of my head. I'll have to look that up.
Do you know, Mr. Reynolds?
27th,
27?
I think.
We need to check to confirm that, but yes, it would need to meet our deadlines.
I respect the request to be postponed for 30 days.
All right.
So the record will reflect then that there has been an agreement by the applicant for the postponement for 30 days.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. We adjourned? All right, we stand adjourned.